I told Lucy she could have all the loot from the spider, and she was like, "Thanks, boss." Then she jumped onto that giant bone spider and cut it clean in half before it even knew what was happening. The thing just collapsed like a bag of Legos. Lucy landed gracefully, her dark blue nun outfit flowing in the wind, looking like some kind of holy action movie star. She told me before that she knew a little swordplay. Yeah, and I know a little about breathing. The Radiant Fire Crusaders ran away behind their shields like pros. They knew where all the traps were. Meanwhile, my Red Moon Knights, bless their hearts, got dragged into fighting undead monsters left and right. Welcome to Red Moon territory, boys. Surprise orientation day. Meanwhile, the real show was happening center stage. The necromancer Lysander was riding this disgusting corruption beast, basically 30 giant corpses stitched together into one big, ugly problem. And it started spraying acid tar everywhere. But Aurora, my light witch, was out there doing superhero stuff. She jumped into the air, her silver hair exploded into a literal halo, and every ghoul within 50 meters had their eyeballs pop like grapes. Holy light judgment, she yelled, and a bunch of bone spider traps just caught fire. Then the werewolves showed up. Because of course they did. Why would anything be simple? The Wolf King Simba. Yes, Simba. I'm not making that up. Crashed onto the battlefield. 5 meters tall, dark red fur, bone spikes on his back, radiating blood moon energy like the world's worst nightlight. My intel told me he was basically fighting to keep his throne, so he was extra angry and motivated. What followed was the messiest three-way fight I've ever seen. Aurora was shooting light beams, Lysander was spraying poison and exploding skeletons, and Simba was ripping through everything with claws that literally tore holes in space. At one point, Aurora's light beams bounced off spiderweb traps and accidentally shattered the Blood Moon barrier's core. Nobody planned that. It was pure chaos. Aurora was running out of gas. Lucy was good, but she was stuck dealing with wolves and monsters. The Radiant Fire Crusaders? Their Vice Captain Vesey Frank was just sitting inside his fancy fire shield watching everything like it was a movie. I asked him for help earlier, and he got petty about it. Cool. Very professional, dude. I needed a play. A big brain play. That's when I looked at Ah Bing. My little skeleton buddy. He looked exactly like all of Lysander's skeleton soldiers, which meant he could walk right up to that necromancer without anyone noticing. Ah Bing, go get him. Ah Bing shook his head. He was scared. Come on, buddy. You're the greatest skeleton warrior ever. Remember when that guy tried to enslave you? This is your revenge, still shaking his head. No courage detected. I pulled out the big guns. Ah Bing, if you take him out, I'll give you extra bones with every meal. At least 3 big ones per serving. Ah Bing's empty eye sockets suddenly lit up with determination. He nodded so hard I thought his skull would fly off. So Ah Bing burrowed underground, sneaked right under the battlefield, and popped up behind Lysander while the necromancer was busy fighting Aurora. Perfect stealth mission. And then, I swear on everything holy, Ah Bing stabbed Lysander right in the butt. Lysander screamed like he'd stepped on the world's worst Lego. He completely lost control of his monsters. He spun around, face twisted in pure shock and betrayal, staring at this random skeleton that had just violated him from behind. "You despicable skeleton freak," he screamed. But before he could do anything about it, Aurora's energy orb she'd been setting up exploded all around him like fireworks at the world's most beautiful funeral. And that was the end of Lysander the necromancer. Taken out by a skeleton bribed with 3 bones per meal and a well-placed stab to the rear end. I have never been prouder of my employee. A notification popped up in my head. Ah Bing just got credit for killing Lysander. Apparently that butt stab was the actual killing blow, not Aurora's giant light explosion. My skeleton employee literally assassinated a necromancer with a stab to the behind and got all the experience points. I couldn't even be mad. And boy, did he level up. My little skeleton soldier transformed into a full-blown phantom knight. He got a ghost horse, purple soul flames in his eyes, corrupted armor fused to his bones, and a bunch of fancy new skills, death charges, magic-absorbing shields, a fear aura, and his swordsmanship jumped to level 5, with a signature move officially called Chrysanthemum Pierce. Yes, that's the real name. I did not make the naming system. Aurora's final explosion wiped out about 80% of the monsters and wolves on the field. Without Lysander pulling the strings, All his undead minions went full zombie free-for-all, just biting and clawing each other like a daycare from hell, which actually worked in our favor. Meanwhile, the Radiant Fire Crusaders Vice Captain Vesey Frank, the guy I'd ticked off earlier, called Lysander useless garbage when he heard the necromancer died. Interesting choice of words for someone who was supposedly not allied with the necromancer. Then he screamed at his knights to retreat immediately, saying the Wolf King had set a trap. And he was right. The ground started shaking. Dust everywhere. Then I saw them. Wave after wave of gray-maned wolves running toward us, transforming into werewolves under the red moonlight. An entire hidden werewolf tribe. I always knew they were out here somewhere. I just never found their base. My adventurers' faces went white. Some of them started crying. Someone said they wanted their mom. More than a few wet their pants. I could smell it, and I wished I couldn't. Aurora had shrunk back into her little girl form. She was completely spent. Lucy offered to grab me and run, but that meant abandoning everyone, giving back all the territory we'd claimed over the past month, and losing the 30-plus adventurers I'd just recruited. Absolutely not. Think, Leanne, think. Everyone grab a sun lamp. Hold them above your heads. Thank God I'd gone on a spending spree and bought a ton of those things. I dug them out of our supply cart, miraculously undamaged through all the chaos, and every night held one up. The connected light pushed back the red moonlight, and the werewolves stopped in their tracks. They hate sunlight. Extended exposure forces them back into human form. Same reason they don't like Aurora. She's basically a walking sun allergy. We formed a circle. Me, Bess, Aurora, Lucy, and Ah Bing in the center. Knights in the next ring. Ah Bing's 10 newly summoned skeleton soldiers on the outer ring. And beyond that, werewolves. Lots and lots of werewolves. Just waiting. They were waiting for peak midnight, when the blood moon would be brightest and the sun lamps would lose their power. Then they'd eat us like a buffet. I couldn't retreat either. Vesey Frank and his crusaders were out there, and I was pretty sure they'd love it if I conveniently died so nobody could stop them from doing whatever shady business they had in Red Moon territory. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and right now, my enemy's enemy was the Wolf King. It clicked. I needed to talk to Simba. Regular werewolves lose their minds after transforming, pure killing machines. But the Wolf King? He could think. He could negotiate. Ah Bing, take me to him. I jumped onto Ah Bing's skeleton horse. Very cool looking. Very impressive entrance energy. One small problem. Sitting on a bone saddle is like parking your butt on a bag of doorknobs. If Ah Bing wasn't my bodyguard now, I'd honestly kick him off and ride solo just for comfort reasons. Sir, what are you doing? One eye looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Little Aurora tugged on my pants leg, her eyes full of worry. Old Bess croaked out something about how this was suicide, that the werewolves had no reason, no logic, they'd never negotiate. I looked back at all of them, my scared, exhausted, pants-wetting team, and smiled. If I don't go out there, when midnight hits and the lamps stop working, we're all dead anyway. Trust me. I paused for dramatic effect. We're all going to see tomorrow's sunrise. Then I rode out on a skeleton horse driven by a skeleton knight whose signature move is stabbing people in the butt. Peak leadership energy. Ah Bing's skeleton horse jumped clean over everyone's heads like some kind of undead show pony. We landed on the outer ring, right in front of the werewolves. They immediately got ready to shred me into human confetti. But I had skeleton soldiers in front of me, and more importantly, I had audacity. Wolf King Simba, I yelled at the top of my lungs. I'm Leanne Edward, Lord of Red Moon Territory, and I've got a deal for you. Simba looked up from licking his wounds and stared at me. Then he waved his paw and growled, and all the werewolves backed off. They didn't like it. You could see it on their furry faces, but they listened. Behind me, I heard everyone exhale at the same time. Bess wiped sweat off his forehead. The female ranger said something nice about my courage. Little Aurora was biting her lip, wishing she was stronger. Lucy put her sword away. Nice to know she was ready to jump in if things went sideways. Human, Simba spoke. Actual words, in a voice that sounded like someone gargling gravel and rusty nails. How do you know my name? He thought there was a traitor in his tribe. Cute. But I had a much better story prepared. Oh, it's not just me who knows your name, buddy. The Radiant Fire Crusaders know it. The entire Empire's leadership knows it. Those Crusaders? They're just the first wave sent to wipe you out. After them comes a second wave, a third, a fourth, until your entire tribe is erased from the map. Was this true? Absolutely not. I was lying through my teeth. But it sounded really convincing. Why should I believe you? I pulled out my secret weapon, James Betty's letter asking for the Wolf King's heart to cure his daughter. I tossed it to a nearby werewolf, who passed it to Simba. He read it. His expression changed. That part was real. What does this have to do with destroying my tribe? Smart Wolf. Still skeptical. So I hit him with the political soap opera. James Bet is just a viscount, but his oldest daughter happens to be the emperor's favorite mistress. The empress is sick. This mistress is probably going to become the next empress. She adores her little sister, the sick one who needs your heart. So she convinced the emperor to send army after army until your tribe surrenders and you hand over your heart. Personally, did I know any of this for sure? Mostly no. Was I weaving together scraps of real information with industrial-grade nonsense? Absolutely. But Simba had zero knowledge of imperial politics. Wolves don't exactly get invited to court dinners. Then Simba did something I was not fully prepared for. He pounced. 1 second I was on the horse. The next I was pinned flat on the ground with a giant werewolf claw gripping my chin. One squeeze and my jaw would shatter like a cheap plate. Look into my eyes, he growled, and say it again. If I catch you lying, I'll kill you right now. His breath smelled like something died inside something else that also died. My eyes were watering. Bing pulled his sword and charged to save me, but got dogpiled by other werewolves. My entire night order went into panic mode. But here's the thing about lying. If you commit hard enough, it becomes the truth. Emotionally, at least. The Radiant Fire Crusaders are just the first wave, I repeated, word by word, staring directly into his giant golden eyes while trying not to gag. After them comes a second, third, fourth. Your tribe will be erased. But I can make that all go away. Simba picked me up off the ground like a rag doll. How? Join me. Pledge loyalty. I'll take in your entire tribe. As for the heart they want. You've got a rival wolf king in your tribe, don't you? The one who's been challenging your authority, trying to split your people? I know you can't beat him alone anymore. But my light witch and my knights can help you take him down. 2 problems solved with 1 heart. Literally. Simba stared at me like I'd just explained calculus to a dog. Except this dog understood calculus and was seriously considering it. I kept going. Full salesman mode. I told him about the necromancers that would keep coming, the monsters pouring out of the undead mountains, how his territory's ecosystem was collapsing, how no trade caravans dared to come here anymore, how his people couldn't grow food in this cursed soil. But if you follow me, citizenship, jobs, food, no more fighting to survive every single night. I was painting the most beautiful picture of civic integration a werewolf had ever heard. Full-on recruitment brochure energy. Simba's eyes flickered. He was wavering. I could feel it. You would truly accept werewolves? Here's the thing about werewolves that nobody tells you. They go crazy every time the red moon comes out. And in red moon territory, the moon is always red at night. So basically, accepting werewolves into your territory is like adopting 100 dogs that turn into murder machines on a nightly schedule. No wonder the previous owners dumped this land. It's not just bad real estate. It's cursed real estate with anger management issues. But I said yes anyway because I'm either a genius or an idiot, and honestly, I still don't know which. Simba kept asking me, "Are you sure? Are you really sure?" Like I was signing up for a gym membership I'd regret. I laid out my whole plan. Separate living areas for wolves and humans, shared workplaces and trade, half self-governance for the tribe. Basically, I was running Red Moon territory like a company, and Simba just got promoted to department manager. Employee of the month, furry edition. He had one condition though: kill Carl first. Carl was the rival wolf king, some outsider trying to steal Simba's throne and split the tribe. Fair enough. Office politics exist everywhere, even in wolf packs. You have 3 days, Simba said. 3 days. Show me results. Then he left. Took all his wolves with him. Just like that. My knights stood there in stunned silence. One eye couldn't believe his own eyes. Bess was shaking with excitement. The female ranger exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 20 minutes. Then somebody started chanting, "Lord Li Yin. Lord Li Yin," and before I knew it, these maniacs picked me up and started throwing me in the air. Like a beach ball. Multiple times. I appreciate the enthusiasm, guys, but maybe warn a man before you launch him toward the sky he almost didn't live to see. After they tossed the Lord, ceremony, I brought everyone inside the manor. All my beautiful traps had already been triggered by wolves and crusaders during the chaos, so my knights had no idea their new boss was basically a medieval home alone enthusiast. They just saw a slightly beat-up estate. Not impressive, but hey, it's home. Time to organize. I split everyone into 3 divisions. Hunting squad, Aurora, Lucy, and Ah Bing. Only the heavy hitters. They'd come with me to find the wolf tribe and deal with Carl. Elite kill team, guard squad. 6 3-star knights plus Ah Bing's 10 skeleton soldiers. 16-person security team. I put the female ranger Dora in charge because she seemed like the only 3-star knight with actual brain cells. Logistics squad, the remaining 25 knights. Their job? Clean the battlefield, fix houses, cook, farm, do chores. Basically everything boring but safe. One Eye and Red Boots both begged to be in logistics. Sorry boys, you're 3-star knights. You're on guard duty. When enemies show up, you fight first. They look like kids who just found out recess was canceled. The logistics crew got to work immediately. Battlefield cleanup, house repairs, and, most importantly, collecting loot. And oh boy, was there loot. Lysander the Necromancer's bounty, 10,000 gold coins. That's exactly enough to pay off Aurora's debt, with 100 coins left over. My little light, which was officially debt-free. Best employee investment I ever made. Then there were 2 corruption beasts worth 5,000 to 8,000 gold each, 25 bone spiders with valuable silk and magic cores in their bellies, 57 ghouls, and 90 skeleton monsters. The logistics guys were way more professional at butchering monsters than me. They had those things dissected and sorted faster than a kitchen crew prepping for dinner rush. A third of our supply cart got destroyed, but the soil-improving potions and seeds survived. The demon-repelling stones could be picked up off the ground. We only really lost food, which we could restock. Then Lucy made dinner. Turns out the murder nun is also a 5-star chef. The food was incredible, and she was glowing. Apparently slaughtering a bunch of undead monsters was therapeutic for her. She looked like she'd just come back from a spa vacation. Half my knights fell instantly in love. Several of them whispered they'd happily work 10 extra years in Red Moon territory if she'd date them. Good luck with that, boys. I had everyone eat together at one big table. Old Bess nearly had a stroke. Apparently lords aren't supposed to eat with their servants. Very unnoble of me. But Bess had just barely survived a near-death experience and didn't have the energy to lecture me about aristocratic etiquette, so I got a free pass. For now, I tapped my glass. Everyone went quiet. Welcome to Red Moon territory, I said with a smile. Our warm little family. I believe that with our hard work, this place will become a thriving domain. I raised my cup. To our bright future. Cheers. 30-something people who almost died tonight clinked their glasses together in a half-destroyed manner in the most cursed territory in the Empire. Led by a lord who'd just negotiated with a werewolf king while pinned to the ground. Backed by a skeleton knight whose signature move targets the rear end. Honestly, things were looking up. Nobody at that dinner table believed me when I called this place a warm family. Their smiles said, yes, my lord. But their eyes said, we're all going to die here. Fair enough. They'd almost been eaten by werewolves an hour ago. But they were slaves and I was the guy who let them eat at the same table, so nobody was about to correct my vocabulary. Lucy raised her teacup, because nuns don't drink alcohol, and she was apparently a real nun, not just cosplaying, and gave me a genuine toast. I felt touched, so I promised to build her a little church. She could preach when she wasn't on murder duty. Her face dropped. You're kicking me off the hunting squad? No, it's a side gig. Preach on your days off. We need a church, because here's the thing. Churches bring resources, and more importantly, religion gives people something to believe in when everything is terrible, which, in Red Moon territory, is always. Happy workers are productive workers, even if their happiness comes from praying they don't get eaten tonight. Also, no people, no farming. No farming, no food. No food, no territory. I needed to attract settlers, and settlers like churches. Lucy smiled again, and every male knight in the room immediately lost brain function. 2 of them started fighting over who belonged to her. One guy offered to kiss her feet. Another screamed, she's mine, like a seagull protecting a French fry. Meanwhile, little Aurora sat in the corner pouting. Nobody was fighting over her. She was internally telling herself she didn't care. But she definitely cared. The thing is, when Aurora transforms, she's actually more beautiful than Lucy. But everyone assumed she was my daughter because of how I treat her, so nobody dared to even look at her wrong. The Lord's daughter was untouchable, which is exactly how I wanted it, even though she's technically my employee. Old Bess was shaking his head in the corner, muttering about how uncivilized this dinner was, how the Edward family had truly fallen from grace. Nobody listened to him, so he tried talking to Ah Bing. Ah Bing responded with, uh-huh. 2 people, 0 communication. Beautiful. After dinner, I pulled the hunting squad into my study for a meeting. 3 days to find the wolf tribe and kill the rival wolf king. No pressure. Why didn't Simba just give us directions? Aurora asked innocently. Sweet child. It's a test. He wants to see if we're legit. Can you find them? I asked Aurora. She shook her head. Lucy also shook her head, which left Ah Bing, my skeleton knight, who also started shaking his head. Nope. You don't get to shake your head. Use your necromancy. Control some undead rats, cockroaches, whatever. I don't care if it's zombie worms. Find that tribe. You have 1 day. If you fail, I'm confiscating all your bones and putting you on an all-vegetable diet. Ah Bing's purple soul flames flickered with pure terror. Not the vegetables. Anything but the vegetables. He can't even digest vegetables. He's a skeleton. Was I using a phantom knight as a glorified pest control spy network? Yes. Was it beneath his rank? Absolutely. Did he accept because bones are more important than dignity? You bet. Aurora, if we clear the field for you, no distractions, can you beat a wolf king who's roughly twice as strong as Simba? She thought for 2 seconds. Yes, perfect. We wait for Ah Bing's intel. Late that night, everyone was settling into their rooms. Bess assigned the logistics crew to servant quarters. The manor was lit up with sun lamps and surrounded by demon-repelling stones. It felt almost cozy, if you ignored the permanent blood-red moon hanging overhead like a giant evil nightlight. Then I heard hooves. The guard squad woke me up. The Radiant Fire Crusaders were back. I put on my robe. Bess threw a coat over my shoulders. Sir, why did they come back? They thought we were dead. They're here to loot our corpses. I was 100% right. Vesey Frank and his crusaders came back expecting to find a field full of dead adventurers and uncollected monster parts. Instead, they found a clean battlefield, 0 loot, and our manor glowing like a holiday house. Vesey rode up to the gate and spotted One Eye on guard. You're not dead? He sounded genuinely disappointed. Nope, One Eye snapped back. And neither is our lord. What are you doing here? You're not welcome. Baron Edward is alive too. Our lord is blessed with great fortune. He'll outlive all you dog turds. The Crusader Knights drew their swords immediately. Vesey didn't stop them. He wanted to see my guy grovel. That's when I walked up to the iron gate in my bathrobe, Bess at my side, hair probably a mess, looking like a very unimpressed homeowner. So, what exactly is the Radiant Fire Crusade doing here? I stared through the bars at these armed idiots. And who gave you permission to draw swords at a nobleman's estate? It was a misunderstanding. We weren't going to attack. Vesey Frank jumped off his horse with a big fake smile, waving at his knights to put their swords away. One Eye and Red Boots snorted. Thought they had guts. Turns out they're just cowards. Vesey walked up to my gate and tried the smooth talk approach. Baron, you survived, impressive. But you've seen how strong the Wolf King is. You need us. Let's cooperate. I leaned against my iron gate in my bathrobe like a man who definitely had the upper hand. You're overestimating yourselves. Red Moon territory doesn't need Radiant Fire's help. But if you want to cooperate, tell me what you're really here for. He blinked. He wasn't expecting me to see through the hole. We just need a wolf heart for a sick girl, cover story. I could see him mentally upgrading my threat level from pushover noble kid to actually annoying. But he wouldn't talk. Fine. I had another plan. Want to come inside and chat? I opened the gate. Smiled warmly. 30 minutes later, do you know who you're messing with? We're the strongest knights in the south. Damn you, Lee and Edward. Lord James will destroy you. Let us out. The entire Radiant Fire Crusade was now in my dungeon, beaten black and blue, screaming through the bars like angry puppies. I picked my ear casually. I told you once already, you're not welcome here. You came back anyway. So I did my duty as Lord and arrested the intruders. Simple stuff. See, here's what they were planning. If we were all dead, take the loot. If we were alive but wounded, bully us, or just straight up kill me and blame the Wolf King, then steal Aurora. Either way, bad intentions. So I had Aurora, freshly recharged from dinner, round them all up. They completely underestimated my girl's recovery speed. Aurora's superpower isn't just light magic. It's being a bottomless pit. Feed her enough, and she's ready for war again in hours. That girl's stomach might be the real reason she'll become the top witch someday. I let one knight go to deliver a ransom message. The rest stayed in the dungeon as collectibles. Finally, bedtime, I yawned. Old Bess was nervous. Sir, the Radiant Fire Crusade is famous in the South. Are we sure about demanding ransom? What if we anger someone powerful? I smiled. Bess, you know who the Emperor's favorite mistress is, Lady Brittany, I believe. And whose daughter is Lady Brittany? Bess shook his head. Lord James of Radiant Fire. The same guy who sent these clowns. Then we definitely can't mess with them. Bess's knees buckled. Relax. Our dear Emperor is going to put Lady Brittany's head on a chopping block very soon. He's already executed 2 wives for less. I happen to know she's been cheating on him, and that man holds grudges like a squirrel holds acorns. When Brittany falls, James falls, and the whole Radiant Fire operation becomes yesterday's news. I said this with absolute confidence because I'd actually seen hidden intel about Brittany's affair. The Emperor was the pettiest man alive. 2 ex-wives, both beheaded. Brittany was next. It was basically guaranteed. Really? Bess looked unconvinced. Just start counting the ransom money, Bess. Well, okay. The word money hit Bess like a healing spell. Instantly cured. The next morning, Bing deployed Operation Rat Spy. He summoned an army of undead rodents and sent them scurrying across Red Moon territory to locate the wolf tribe. My Phantom Knight was officially running a skeleton rat intelligence network. I'd say this wasn't what I imagined when he got promoted, but honestly, it's exactly what I imagined. Meanwhile, I had more important business. Farming. I followed the druid's instructions and hammered holy oil-soaked oak stakes into the scorched earth, then wrapped dark red rope between them in a 17-pointed star pattern. When the last knot clicked into place, the cracked ground started oozing purple-black sludge, leftover cursed poison from last season. Disgusting, but good. That meant the purification circle was working, squeezing the toxins out like popping a giant earth pimple. The logistics crew scraped off the contaminated layer until we hit fresh, dark brown soil that actually smelled like real dirt. Good dirt. The kind that makes farmers emotional. Then I got on one knee, pulled out a crystal dropper, and dripped emerald green potion onto the soil. The liquid vaporized on contact into tiny floating sparkles, and wherever it soaked in, white smoke rose up smelling like fresh grass. The hard-packed earth became soft and fluffy right before our eyes. A few wild thistles popped up, touched the magic steam, and immediately withered back into fertilizer. Circle of life, baby. The seeds of plenty came out next on a black obsidian tray, and every single seed had spiral patterns that were moving on their own. Alive. Squirming. Deeply unsettling. I picked them up with silver tweezers like a surgeon and planted each one exactly 15 centimeters deep. Every time a seed went in, the soil rippled like water. Like something invisible was swimming underneath. Finally, the moment of truth. I pulled out Aurora's gift, the harvest flute. I swallowed hard and put it to my lips. The first note came out sharp enough to cut air, and the weed engravings carved on the flute suddenly sprouted tiny amber eyeballs. Eyeballs. On a flute. I was playing a haunted musical instrument and trying not to think about it. Golden sound waves rippled across the field, and everywhere the seeds were planted, green shoots burst through the soil with a sound like 1,000 tiny harps being plucked simultaneously. The sprouts grew like time-lapse footage on fast forward, shooting up, thickening, forming stalks, growing heads of grain. Each wheat head was the size of a fist, glowing amber like honey trapped in crystal. Within minutes, I was standing in front of an actual wheat field, waving in the breeze. Golden and beautiful. Everyone's jaws hit the floor. Red Moon territory, the cursed wasteland where nothing grows, where monsters roam, where even the dirt wants to kill you, had a wheat field. I lowered my haunted eyeball flute and tried to look like this was totally normal, and I absolutely did not almost pee myself when the flute grew eyes. After the wheat miracle, I went full farmer mode. Second field, third field, fourth field. I kept going until every piece of garbage land around the village was transformed into proper farmland with seeds of plenty growing in it. The magic potion turned cursed dirt into soft, rich soil. Thousands of years of farming civilization ancestors were smiling down at me. See, the difference between me and every other lord in this world is simple. They see land and think, can I conquer something better? I see land and think, can I grow stuff here? Western conquest mentality versus agricultural civilization brain. Nobody wanted to invest in fixing bad soil when they could just fight over good soil. Their loss, my wheat. Only problem, the harvest flute nearly killed me every time I played it. One session, and I was completely drained. Plus the thing was soulbound to me, so nobody else could use it. I needed to get stronger just to play a musical instrument longer. This is the most ridiculous fitness motivation I've ever had. Why do you work out? So I can play the flute better. Incredible. That evening, Lucy made dinner again. Absolute goddess tier cooking. Everyone ate 2 extra bowls. The manor's food budget was skyrocketing, but once our wheat came in, we wouldn't need to buy from 4-leaf territory anymore. Huge savings. Now, I deliberately did not give Ah Bing his bones tonight. He sat in the corner, watching everyone eat meat and drink soup with the saddest purple flames I'd ever seen in empty eye sockets. Then this idiot picked up a bowl of squash soup, poured it into his mouth, and it just dribbled straight through his ribcage onto the floor. The adventurers burst out laughing. Ah Bing sighed, an actual, emotional, human-sounding sigh, stood up and walked out. Everyone watched through the window as he mounted his skeleton horse and rode off into the red moonlight like a depressed cowboy in a sad movie. Sir, Ah Bing left, Bess reported. I noticed. Aren't we being a little cruel? Aurora asked, chewing on steak. You don't know your potential until someone pushes you. But Ah Bing isn't a person. He's a skeleton. No, I corrected her. He's a phantom knight. Aurora nodded and turned her attention to Lucy, who was cutting her steak with surgical precision, holding her knife and fork with the elegance of a princess and the eyes of a serial killer. Aurora blushed slightly and started copying Lucy's table manners. My little light which felt outclassed by a nun. She's the illegitimate daughter of northern nobility, and she was losing the etiquette competition to a church lady. But here's what Aurora didn't see, what I saw. Lucy wasn't gracefully eating steak. She was dissecting it, like a living specimen. That look in her eyes? Pure psychopath energy. This woman needed years of therapy. It was a miracle every night in the manor was head over heels for her. I was the only sane person left. After dinner, I went to the yard for combat training. With Ah Bing gone, I had to spar with one of his summoned skeleton soldiers. Big mistake. These guys had none of Ah Bing's finesse and absolutely zero concept of holding back. Stop. Stop. That's enough for today. I was getting chased around like a chew toy. I blamed the harvest flute for draining me. That's why I was losing. Definitely the flute. Not because I'm weak. The flute. The skeleton soldier delivered one final roundhouse kick that launched me into a wall. I slid down and landed in the mud. Great. Wonderful. Your pay is docked. The skeleton had no pay. And no ears to hear me with. He just stood back at his post like nothing happened. Bess rushed over in a panic. Sir, are you all right? I brushed dirt off my clothes. Fine. Is Ah Bing back yet? Bess leaned in and whispered. What if Ah Bing ran away? I wasn't worried. I know my people. Even the bony ones. Next morning, Ah Bing came trotting back on his ghost horse. He'd spent the entire night controlling undead rats and other low-level monsters, interrogating them for information, and he found the wolf tribe. Northeast section of Red Moon territory, about half a day's ride from the manor. Ah Bing, beautiful work. Bess, are the bones ready? No, sir. Ah Bing's soul fire went completely flat. He stared at Bess with the betrayed energy of a dog who was promised a treat. Bess chuckled. Well, I didn't prepare many. But 1 or 2, sure. Ah Bing's hips did a happy wiggle, and he followed Bess to the kitchen like a kid going to the candy store. My skeleton employee dances when he's happy. He literally has no muscles, and he still finds a way to bust a move. I don't understand him, but I respect him. I called a hunting squad meeting. The plan was simple. Sneak into the wolf tribe, find the rival wolf King Carl, and capture him quietly. If he resisted too much, just kill him. Problem was, Ah Bing couldn't go. He's a giant skeleton on a ghost horse. The wolves would spot him immediately and go berserk. Lucy couldn't go either. She's from the Sun Church. Werewolves hate sunlight religion the way cats hate baths. Natural enemies. So it was just me and Aurora. But how do we sneak in? Aurora asked with genuine confusion on her little face. Excellent question. How does a human lord and a pint-sized light, which infiltrate a werewolf village without getting instantly murdered? I was still working on that part. I've got a plan, I announced, pulling out 2 full wolf pelts and draping one over myself like a fashion statement. Look, what do I look like? A lord wearing wolf skin, Lucy said without blinking. My confidence took a direct hit. Was my disguise really that bad? Okay, fine, but here's the thing, I explained, recovering quickly. During the day, werewolves look like normal humans. They only wolf out under the red moon. And when they do transform, most of them lose their minds. They can't see properly and rely on smell to tell friend from enemy. So if Aurora and I wear these wolf pelts when the moon comes out, the smell covers us. Perfect disguise. Lord, great idea, but can you wash these things first? They're disgusting. Aurora held the pelt at arm's length like it was a dead rat. The dirtier they are, the better they hide your scent. Oh, Aurora's face crumpled. Oh no, but sir, Lucy raised a good point. During the daytime, when they're all human-shaped, won't they notice you're strangers? That's why we need a cover identity. I flicked my adventurer badge, the one Tom gave me when we signed that trade deal. Adventurer status is normally useless, but for entering sketchy places like werewolf villages, golden ticket. Adventurer. Aurora's big eyes were full of beautiful, innocent cluelessness. Think about it, I said. The wolf tribe lives in Red Moon territory. No trade caravans come here. The land grows nothing. So how do they survive? Who brings them supplies? Who? Aurora had nothing. Adventurer merchants. We disguise as traveling wolf clan traders. Same species, plus useful goods. They'll welcome us with open arms. Aurora's eyes lit up. Oh, I totally already figured that out. I just didn't say anything because I was being modest. Lucy and I both nodded politely. Sure you did, sweetie. Aurora turned away, pouting. I hate smart people. Always making things complicated instead of just telling me. Then she felt something land on her head. A stinky wolf pelt. EWWW, it's dirty. Ignoring her protests, we hit the road. A skeleton soldier drove the cart while I briefed Aurora on the rules inside. Rule 1. Don't talk. You're terrible at acting, so silence is your best disguise. Leave the talking to me. Rule 2. This hand sign means okay. It means you can attack. This one means go. It means we run. Sorry, I mean tactical retreat. Rule 3. We're catching the new Wolf King only. Do not hurt any other werewolves. These people are my future employees. Aurora's little face scrunched up like a raisin. Can't I just blow everything up? You just recovered your magic and you're already talking crazy. You're a beginner witch. You'd run out of mana, and then we'd both be dog food. We use our brains, not explosions. There's a saying where I come from. The real battlefield isn't about fighting. It's about understanding people. What does that even mean? Why do you always say weird stuff? Ignore that. Now repeat everything I just told you. Half a day later, we arrived at the wolf tribe's territory. It looked exactly like what you'd expect. Rough stone houses scattered through forest clearings, covered in moss and crumbling thatch roofs. The roads were so bumpy our cart sounded like it was dying. The werewolves walking around were tall, muscular, and even in human form. Their faces looked wolfish. Sharp yellow eyes, claws that glinted like metal, thick fur visible under crude leather armor. The Red Moon's influence had pushed them halfway between human and beast permanently. Guards spotted us immediately and flashed their claws. Easy, boys, I said, pulling the cart curtain aside with my most disarming smile. We're adventurer merchants. Same clan as you. Here to do business. The guard squinted suspiciously, then peeked through the window and saw Aurora. She was wearing little wolf ears on her head as part of her disguise. The guard's Adam's apple bobbed. His tough guy expression melted. A tiny blush crept across his wolfish face. See, female werewolves in this tribe were all built like tanks. They'd never seen anything as small and adorable as Aurora with fuzzy wolf ears. She was basically a nuclear weapon of cuteness and didn't even know it. The guard cleared his throat, trying to stay professional. What business? Beef. I slapped the raw meat stacked in the cart. Wild bull from the Daba Mountains. Freshest cuts you'll find. My sister and I have been trading this route for a while. His nose twitched. Werewolf noses don't lie. He could smell the beef was real. And I told him we were fellow wolf clan. That was the real key. Same species plus food equals instant trust. He let us through. The skeleton soldier got stopped at the gate though. No undead allowed inside. Fine. I parked the cart at the entrance and Aurora and I walked in on foot. Within minutes, a mud-covered kid ran up to us. Outsiders. What are you doing here? Selling beef, little buddy. The kid's eyes went wide. Meat. There's meat. We're getting meat. He screamed it loud enough for the entire village to hear. Werewolves started appearing from every direction, surrounding us in seconds. They towered over us, yellow eyes burning, claws out, looking like they were about to skip the transaction and go straight to stealing. Aurora gulped and whispered, "They're not going to rob us, right?" Excellent question. I was surrounded by 100 hungry werewolves who hadn't had proper food in months, carrying a cart full of fresh beef, with my only backup being a little girl in wolf ears whose magic I specifically told not to use. Peak planning. Aurora and I stood there surrounded by werewolves, ready to fight for our lives. Aurora had a light ball forming in her palm. My hand was on my sword. This was it. The big showdown. Then the werewolves started cheering. Meat. Finally meat. Stupid magic monsters ruined our hunting for a whole month. Come to my house. I'll trade with you. No, my house. I've got wolf fangs to sell. Forget fangs, I've got gold and jewels. Follow me. They grabbed us from every direction, pulling us like we were the last toy on a store shelf during the holidays. I stood there blinking. These terrifying killing machines were fighting over who got to buy beef from me first. All that stress and preparation. And it turned out the scariest werewolf army in the territory was just really, really hungry. I suddenly thought maybe I should just become a beef salesman and conquer this tribe through commerce. But no, the profit margins on reselling market beef were terrible. Better to recruit them all as employees. Specifically miners. I still had my eye on that silver mine in the undead mountains. Aurora tugged my sleeve and whispered, "We don't have enough meat for everyone. What do we do?" I stared at her. "Girl, we are undercover spies on a kidnapping mission, and you are worried about inventory management?" I coughed loudly. "Since everyone wants beef, bring me to your wolf king. I'll negotiate one big deal for the whole tribe. I don't do door-to-door sales." The werewolves loved this idea and started shoving us forward. I winked at Aurora. She gave me a secret thumbs up. Everything was going according to plan. Then everyone stopped at a fork in the road and started arguing. Take them to Simba. He's the real king. Take them to Carl. Simba's washed up. Carl is an outsider. Simba built this tribe from nothing. Simba's OLD. Carl would destroy him in a fight. Both sides turned to me. Outsider, who are you going with? This was actually perfect. I now knew exactly where the tribal fault lines were, but I couldn't pick a side yet without blowing my cover. Wait, you have two wolf kings? How does that work? We only have one. Both groups shouted at the same time. Okay. I just want to talk to whoever's in charge. Since you can't agree, why not bring both kings to me? Aurora looked surprised. She thought I'd go straight for Carl. But picking sides when my cover identity was a random beef merchant would be suspicious. Gotta play dumb. Oh, she whispered when I explained. That makes sense. They stuck us in a stone hut with 2 guards outside, and minutes later, both wolf kings showed up with their entourages. The whole tribe came out for the beef drama. These wolves had their priorities straight. Simba and Carl were both in human form. Simba looked like a grizzled, old strong man with gray hair. Carl was young, cocky, with the energy of someone who thought he was God's gift to wolfkind. The moment they stood next to each other, the tension was thick enough to bite. Simba saw me and instantly understood the real situation. He kept his face neutral. Good actor, that old wolf. I hear you're selling beef, Carl said, stepping forward like he owned the conversation. Long-term supply, I said with my best merchant smile. But I need to know who actually makes decisions around here. Carl smirked at Simba. How about we settle this right now, old man? One fight, one winner, and our merchant friend here gets his answer. Then Simba did something I was not prepared for. He grabbed my throat at lightning speed and slammed me face first into the mud. You outsider. Thinking a little meat gives you the right to cause trouble in our tribe. This was acting. I knew it was acting. But Simba was pressing my face into wet dirt with genuine force, and I was genuinely choking. I made a mental note to dock his pay later. This old wolf was way too committed to his role. Let go of my brother, Aurora said in the stiffest, most robotic voice I have ever heard. She sounded like someone reading a hostage negotiation script for the first time. Thankfully, werewolves are not known for their drama critic abilities, so nobody noticed. Carl spat on the ground. Simba, let him go. Kill the merchant and nobody eats. Simba released me and growled something about not letting outsiders divide the tribe. Translation: he couldn't beat Carl in a fair fight and was buying time. If he lost a formal duel, all his supporters would abandon him. Carl knew this too but couldn't force it, so both kings were stuck in the world's most passive-aggressive stalemate. Meanwhile, the background werewolves were having their own important discussion about whether beef tastes better raw or grilled. Democracy in action. Carl pulled me out of the mud with a friendly grin. So, merchant, you've met us both. Your choice. I picked Carl without hesitation. You? Let's do business. Carl threw his head back laughing. See that, Simba? Even outsiders know who the real king is. Simba's face went dark, but he said nothing. Perfect acting. I'd definitely give him a raise before docking his pay. Actually, no. He shoved my face in mud. Paydock stance. Carl's supporters marched us toward his palace like a victory parade, leaving Simba and his people standing at the crossroads looking defeated. As we walked away, I heard one of Simba's followers whisper to him, "Sir, you were too aggressive back there." Yes. Yes, he was. My neck still hurt, and I had mud in places mud should never be. But the plan was working. I was inside Carl's inner circle now, about to sit down with the enemy Wolf King for a friendly chat about beef prices, while secretly planning to either kidnap him or kill him within the next 48 hours. Just another normal day for the Lord of Red Moon territory. Simba stood there silently watching us leave, playing the defeated old king perfectly. Not a great actor, but silence worked fine for him. I rubbed my hands together like the greasiest merchant you've ever seen. Carl, sir, why don't we check out the beef samples at my cart first? I didn't bring much, just samples. If you like what you taste, we'll arrange full shipments of live cattle. Aurora copied me, rubbing her hands and squinting her eyes, trying to look cunning. She looked about as cunning as a baby duck pretending to be a shark. 0% intimidating. 100% adorable. She completely missed the point of the performance. Carl couldn't resist. No wolf can resist meat, especially after 2 weeks of eating vegetables. His followers had gone a full month without meat. When I suggested sampling, everyone knew that meant eating, and Carl's entire fan club wanted to come along. I leaned close to Carl's ear and whispered something strategic. He immediately ditched the crowd and brought only 2 bodyguards. Smart move on his part. Sharing meat with everyone would be generous, but eating it with just 2 guys meant he looked fair without actually sharing much. I basically helped him justify being selfish. Politics works the same everywhere, whether you're human or wolf. We walked into the forest where my skeleton soldier was waiting. Why do you have an undead creature driving your cart? Bought him at the slave market in 4-leaf territory. They sell everything there. You guys should visit sometime. Very fancy. Carl stared at me. Then he gave his 2 bodyguards a look. They instantly moved into position, surrounding Aurora and me from both sides, while Carl blocked the front. Triangle formation. Trapped. The 4-leaf slave market doesn't sell skeleton monsters, Carl growled. His face was already changing. His hands swelled into massive, deformed paws covered in fur, claws extending like kitchen knives. His yellow eyes went cold. Skeletons near the undead mountains, always rebel. Nobody would buy them. Who are you really? His 2 warriors popped their claws out too, ready to shred us into confetti. We really are just merchants, I shrugged casually. We were deep in the forest now. No need to keep pretending much longer. Don't move, Carl snarled at his bodyguards. I'm going to personally twist this liar's neck off. He was furious. Not just because there was no beef, but because he'd been played in front of his people. He was supposed to be the one outsmarting old Simba, and instead he got outsmarted by a random beef salesman. His bodyguards looked equally devastated. They wanted to eat us, and I mean that literally. The only thing stopping them was the wolf tribe rule against eating their own kind. You shouldn't have messed with us, one growled. Carl will rip your throat out and hang you from a tree by your intestines, the other added helpfully. Sounds painful, I said with a smile. Then I snapped my fingers. Aurora stepped forward. But what if your opponent is a witch? What would you do then? The wolves stared at us like we'd just told them the sky was green. Then they burst out laughing. A witch? In Red Moon territory? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Carl, be careful not to hurt the little witch lady. We can't afford her anger. Ha ha ha. Aurora kicked one of them so hard he flew through 3 bushes and a small tree. 2 light orbs appeared in her palms. She blasted Carl and the remaining bodyguard before they could blink. 5 minutes later, all 3 werewolves were tied up like birthday presents and tossed in the back of my cart. Aurora had covered them with black cloth bags to block the moonlight, and I turned on the sun lamps inside the cart. Without red moonlight, werewolves stay in human form and lose most of their strength. They were basically regular muscular dudes now. Angry, helpless, regular muscular dudes. Let us go, you cowardly humans. Do you know who I am? When the red moon rises, I'll tear you apart. A real witch. She's actually a real witch. The skeleton soldier whipped the horses, and we bounced away through the forest at maximum speed. I sat in the cart watching 3 legendary wolf warriors thrash around in their ropes, and honestly couldn't believe how smoothly this had gone. I was starting to suspect these werewolves were secretly huskies. How had they survived in Red Moon territory this long? Definitely not with their brains. But what if this was too easy? What if it was a trap? What if Carl let himself get captured? I had to be sure. So I did what any responsible lord would do. I interrogated them. Confess. What's your real plan? You let us catch you on purpose, didn't you? This is entrapment. Are you even the real Carl? Did a zombie eat your brain? How did someone this dumb become Wolf King? Explain yourself. Talk. Or I use the secret weapon. Carl and his warriors looked at me like I was insane. They'd lost their meat and their dignity in the same afternoon. But they wouldn't crack. So I pulled out the secret weapon. Wolf mint. It's like catnip, but for wolves. The moment I waved it under their noses, 3 fearsome wolf warriors transformed into the dumbest, happiest puppies you've ever seen. Tongues out, butts wiggling, practically wagging invisible tails. Carl, the terrifying rival Wolf King who was going to tear my throat out, was drooling on himself and nuzzling the mint like a golden retriever meeting a tennis ball. Aurora's jaw dropped. She held up the wolf mint and examined it like a scientist discovering a new element. What, I asked this? How did it turn them into that? Wolf mint. Same concept as catnip. Opens their hearts right up. Also destroys every shred of their warrior reputation. Once I confirmed through their mint-induced honesty that there was no conspiracy, no trap, and Carl really was just that gullible, I relaxed. We brought all 3 back to the manor and threw them in the dungeon alongside the Radiant Fire Crusaders. My dungeon was getting crowded. At this rate, I need to build a bigger one. The Lord of Red Moon territory was becoming the continent's most aggressive jailer, one beef scam at a time. A few days later, Simba showed up at my front door like a guy arriving for a job interview he already knew he'd passed. Lucy greeted him with her trademark angelic smile and led him inside. On the way in, he got to see several enormous former Crusader knights squeezed into servant uniforms that were 3 sizes too small, scrubbing floors and patching roofs. Welcome to Red Moon Territory's rehabilitation program. First stop, the dungeon. I wanted Simba to see Carl and his 2 buddies locked up and miserable. Nothing says, I kept my promise, like showing your business partner his rival sitting in a cage. Simba looked at Carl. Carl looked at Simba. Nobody said anything. Beautiful moment. Then I brought Simba to the meeting room. A contract was already sitting on the round table. I'd written it days ago because I'm just that confident. So, do you see my sincerity now? Simba studied the contract carefully. I need one addition. You must provide the wolf tribe with enough meat. We can pay. Done. Everyone living in Red Moon territory will eat meat. That's a promise, Simba signed. Then he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 10 years. And honestly, he probably had been. Turns out the old wolf had dreamed of getting his people officially recognized by the Empire for ages. But humans consider beast folk to be dangerous lower-class creatures who could snap at any moment. That's why Simba hid his entire tribe in this cursed wasteland. Not because he liked it, but because nobody else would take them. Life here had only gotten worse over the years. The ecosystem was collapsing, hunting was impossible, and now they couldn't even find food. Signing this contract looked like selling out his people on the surface, but Simba was actually buying his children a future. Real citizenship meant they could stop hiding forever. I put my hand on his shoulder. Simba, you're a great leader. Under our combined management, the wolf tribe is going to thrive. He managed a small smile. What happens to Carl? Bounty money. Speaking of which, how will you explain all this to your people? Leave that to me. I'll make sure everyone follows Red Moon Territory's laws. No trouble. Good. Now, about housing. I walked over to the map on my wall and circled an area with my pen. Move everyone here. Simba's eyes went wide. That's the village closest to your manor, and it has real farmland, with actual wheat growing in it. Your tribe is the first official residents of Red Moon Territory besides my knights. First residents get the best neighborhood. Simple as that. I said it casually, like giving away prime real estate to werewolves was the most normal thing in the world. Simba stared at me like I'd just handed him the deed to paradise. This area will grow from a village into a city eventually, I continued. The farmland will expand too. Consider this an investment in your future. Simba dropped to one knee. Full formal oath of loyalty. From this day forward, Wolf King Simba pledges eternal service to you, my lord. I will be your most faithful vassal. I nodded. Rise. Now, select your best warriors and form a wolf knight order. His head snapped up. We can become knights. The excitement in his voice hit different. When Simba was young, before the curse turned him into a werewolf, he dreamed of being a knight. That dream died the moment he grew fur and claws. Now I was handing it back to him, decades later, in a rundown manner in the worst territory in the empire. You're my vassal now. Technically nobility. You can absolutely have your own knight order. Practically speaking, I needed those hyperactive wolf warriors doing something productive. A knight order meant Simba's inner circle got official titles, felt closer to human society, and developed a sense of belonging. More importantly, I could order them around more easily. The Wolf Knight Order would work alongside my Red Moon Knight Order to clear out corrupted monsters in the surrounding area. Wolves who didn't make the cut for the Knight Order could join the logistics team, farming, building, general labor. Red Moon Territory achieving self-sufficiency was no longer a fantasy. It was a plan with teeth. Literally. I had best prepare a farewell gift for Simba, an entire cart of beef. Simba drove away crying actual tears. A 50-year-old wolf king, sobbing over a wagon of cow meat. This world is something else. The moment Simba's cart disappeared over the horizon, Bess started his favorite hobby, complaining about money. Sir, our food consumption is enormous. We just gave away a whole cart of meat. We need another supply run to 4-leaf territory immediately. Bess couldn't understand why I'd accepted the wolves instead of selling them all for bounty money. In his head, kidnapping an entire werewolf tribe and cashing them in would have made us instantly rich. Feed them meat, give them land. Madness. Pure financial madness. But Bess had learned to keep his mouth shut over these past weeks. He'd watched me make decision after decision that seemed insane at first, and then worked out perfectly. The bookworm young master he once knew was gone. In his place was someone who made bold calls and somehow kept being right. He didn't understand it, but he respected it. Plus, no more worrying about werewolf attacks during every trip outside. That alone was worth the beef investment. Didn't we buy 3 months of supplies last time? I asked. That was when we had 5 people. Now we're feeding an entire night order, a wolf tribe, and a dungeon full of crusader prisoners who've been eating our food for 7 days with 0 ransom payment. At this rate, we'll go bankrupt before anyone pays us back. Fair point. The dungeon situation was becoming expensive. Those crusaders ate 3 meals a day and contributed nothing. Where was their ransom money? Maybe something happened in Radiant Fire territory, I said, rubbing my chin. That would explain why nobody's come for them. Unfortunately, we're so isolated out here we can't even buy a newspaper. So what do? Send someone to gather intelligence. The Peachin owner in 4-leaf territory should know something. Send One Eye's partner to investigate. I still felt slightly awkward about One Eye's romantic situation, but business was business. And until we get answers about the ransom, I raised an eyebrow. No free meals in this territory. Put the prisoners to work. Red Moon territory was a construction zone. Half the village was still damaged from the Crusaders' own attack. Seemed only fair they'd be the ones fixing it. Poetic justice, served with a shovel and a bucket of mortar. That evening, 2 speeches were happening at the same time in 2 different locations, and I swear they were cosmically synchronized. Over at the Wolf Tribe, Simba was holding up a bowl of meat soup like a trophy, giving the motivational speech of his lifetime. Meanwhile, I was standing in front of my Knight Order doing the exact same thing. We were both selling the same deal to our respective audiences, just from different angles. Simba was telling his wolves they'd never go hungry again, that they were officially recognized citizens, that no adventurer would ever hunt them for bounty money. I was telling my knights that the wolves would become our strongest defense force against corrupted monsters, and all they wanted in return was meat with every meal, which they'd pay for. I even pitched it as a business opportunity. Anyone want to run a meat delivery route? Buy cheap in 4-leaf territory, sell to hungry werewolves here, pocket the difference. Easy money. Eyes lit up around the room. Nothing motivates former adventurers like profit margins. Simba told his people about the beautiful village I'd offered them, the fertile farmland with actual wheat growing in it, the promise of a real future. I told my people about the gold. Yes, gold. See, when I was interrogating Carl with Wolf Mint, the drooling idiot confessed everything. The real reason he'd invaded Simba's tribe wasn't for power or glory. It was because he'd discovered a gold mine hidden underneath the old stone village. That was his entire master plan. Take over the tribe, mine the gold, get rich. Not exactly a complicated villain. This also made me suspicious about why the Radiant Fire Crusaders were really snooping around Red Moon territory. Maybe the Wolf Heart story was just a cover, and they were actually after the gold too. I didn't confront Vesey about it though. Instead, I wrote a polite, completely innocent letter to Lord James Bett, pretending I knew nothing. Let him think I was still a clueless young baron. Meanwhile, I sent One-Eye's partner to the Peach Inn to dig up intelligence on what was really happening in Radiant Fire territory. Simba was getting emotional now. He told his wolves about the Wolf Knight Order, how their strongest warriors could become actual knights. The weaker ones could farm and gather. Everyone would have a job and a purpose. He told them to be grateful and obey the laws of Red Moon territory. I was giving a similar speech. Wolves could fight alongside our knights for dangerous missions. Others could farm and build. Every single werewolf would contribute to building Red Moon territory into something great. Then Simba got serious. He told his people that anyone who broke Red Moon territory's laws would be punished according to those laws, not tribal customs. I also got serious. I told my knights that wolves joining us didn't mean they could cause trouble. The Red Moon affects their minds and makes them irrational, so clear laws were essential. Then came the awkward part. Simba, what exactly are the laws of Red Moon territory? The wolves asked. Lord Leon, what exactly are the laws of Red Moon territory? My knights asked. At the exact same moment, in 2 different locations, Simba and I both went silent. I don't actually know yet, we both said. I realized I needed to write laws immediately. With 145 werewolves about to move in, I couldn't just wing it anymore. That's enough people to fill an entire village. Real governance required real rules. I just hadn't gotten around to making any because I'd been too busy fighting necromancers, negotiating with wolf kings, capturing crusaders, and playing a haunted flute that grows eyeballs. Simba, meanwhile, had his own realization. He'd promised his people would follow laws he hadn't even read. What if I made some insane rule like, werewolves cannot transform under the Red Moon, penalty is death? His entire tribe would be wiped out by morning. Though based on how I treated them so far, he figured I probably wouldn't do something that crazy. Probably. Despite the awkward legal gap, both speeches ended with thunderous applause. The wolves raised their meat soup in celebration. My adventurers daydreamed about gold nuggets. Everyone was happy for completely different reasons. After the speeches, things moved fast. Our war loot from the big battle got sold in 4-leaf territory and converted into supplies. I bought more magic soil potions and expanded our farmland from a tiny experimental patch to a full hectare. 10 times bigger. Besides wheat, we now had corn, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes growing. I desperately wanted rice, but the druid didn't sell rice seeds. My kingdom for a bowl of steamed white rice. Instead, I was eating bread and baked potatoes like a medieval peasant. Which technically I was, just with a fancier title. The shopping spree continued. I bought a coop full of chickens, 10 pigs, 20 sheep, 30 cattle, and 20 horses. The horses went to the stables. Everything else went to our brand new livestock farm, managed by the logistics team. When I stood at the edge of the village and watched actual animals grazing in actual pastures, while werewolves carried their belongings into actual houses next to actual wheat fields, something clicked in my chest. This was starting to feel like a real territory. Farms, livestock, residents. The next steps were clear. Keep clearing corrupted monsters, expand from village to town size, and build proper walls and defenses. Even at village scale, walls were essential. You can't have werewolves and undead monsters roaming around without a nice thick wall between civilization and chaos. So I announced Red Moon Territory's very first official law. All new residents must help build the city wall. My adventurers weren't technically new anymore, so the construction duty fell squarely on Simba's wolves. But since they were the ones living inside the walls, they were basically building their own home security system. Zero complaints. They didn't even want payment. Just meat. 3 meals a day with meat, and these wolves would build me the Great Wall of Red Moon. While the wolves were stacking stones and building watchtowers, Bing skeleton scouts came back from exploring the old stone village. Good news, the gold mine was real, sitting right under a dried-up well in the old wolf settlement. Carl wasn't lying. Actual gold, underground, waiting to be dug up. Bad news, somebody already lived down there. A mysterious underground race had claimed the mine as their own. The gold belonged to them. My skeletons basically walked into someone else's living room and found out the treasure had landlords. Of course it did. Nothing in Red Moon Territory ever comes free. Every single good thing in this cursed place has a catch attached to it. Free farmland, cursed soil, free wolf army. They go berserk every night. Free gold mine, occupied by mysterious subterranean beings who probably wouldn't appreciate me showing up with pickaxes. I sat down, rubbed my temples, and wondered what species I'd have to negotiate with next. At this rate, my resume would just say professional monster diplomat by the end of the year. While I was busy playing farmer and building my little werewolf paradise, interesting things were happening in Radiant Fire territory. I only found out about them later through the Peach and Intelligence Network, but let me paint the picture. My polite ransom letter arrived at the Radiant Fire Manor, where it was read aloud by a trained yellow bird. Not a messenger. An actual songbird that could read 3 languages. Rich people are insane. The guy listening was David Bett, James Betty's 3rd son, who had recently done something very Game of Thrones. He'd overthrown his own father and killed all his brothers to become the new lord. This explained why nobody came to pay ransom for the Crusaders. Their boss was dead, and the new boss had other priorities. David had his own contract which named Tina, a redhead with a fiery personality. Literally fiery. When David made some sarcastic comment comparing her to my witch, Tina casually threw a fireball that incinerated an entire wall of expensive paintings and antiques. Elf slave girls screamed and dove for cover. Knights drew their swords. David just waved them off like this happened every Tuesday. Next time you provoke me, Tina said coldly, it won't be the wall that burns. It'll be you and your pet bird. David smoothed things over by offering her 2 boxes of awakening stones, rare magical crystals that could help witches level up. Tina wanted to become the Empire's chief witch, and David promised to help her get there. In exchange, once she completed her 2nd awakening, she'd help him conquer Red Moon territory. So that was fun to learn about. A psychopath aristocrat with daddy issues and a fire witch who could burn down buildings wanted my land. Added to my growing list of problems, right between mysterious underground gold mine residents and still no rice. Seeds available. David also had some truly disgusting hobbies involving his elf slaves that I won't get into, but let's just say the new Radiant Fire Lord made his dead father look like a saint by comparison. The Crusader Captain Peter could hear screaming as he walked out of the manor with his orders: go pay the ransom, retrieve the prisoners, and bring back the Wolf King. Meanwhile, back in my territory, I was completely unaware of any dramatic villain monologues happening about me. I was covered in dirt, wearing a straw hat and hemp clothes, looking exactly like what I was, a farmer who happened to own a territory. Peter and his 20 knights had the worst road trip of their lives getting to Red Moon territory. They fought through 35 separate monster attacks along the way. 35. By the time they reached my village, these guys were mentally destroyed. Then they looked up and saw werewolves building walls. Something seems off about this place, one knight muttered. Those aren't just beast people. Those are werewolves. Please tell me this isn't a werewolf den. Look, skeleton monsters too. I can only imagine their faces. They'd just survived a nightmare gauntlet of corrupted monsters, and now they were staring at a village full of werewolves casually doing construction work alongside skeleton soldiers. It was like walking into an alternative universe where the monsters had 9 to 5 jobs. Then One Eye spotted their Radiant Fire banner from the watchtower and blew the emergency horn. Everything went sideways in about 3 seconds. The werewolves dropped their tools and charged out like an angry football team. 20 knights got surrounded by 100+ snarling wolf warriors before they could even explain themselves. Then Bing came galloping in on his ghost horse, sword drawn, eyes burning with purple fire, clearly planning to introduce his signature chrysanthemum pierce technique to some new victims. I scrambled up the watchtower just in time. Stop. Those are guests. They're from Radiant Fire territory. Bring them inside. Everyone froze. Bing looked genuinely disappointed. He'd been practicing. I smacked one eye on the head. Don't blow the attack horn every time you see someone approaching. You scared our guests half to death. Sorry, sir. One eye rubbed his eye. Singular. I'll do better next time. I made a mental note that a one-eyed man was probably not ideal for watchtower duty. Detection accuracy was questionable at best. I already knew what was happening in Radiant Fire territory thanks to the Peachin's intel. The bloody coup, David killing his father and brothers, the whole mess. It was horrifying, but ultimately someone else's family drama. What mattered to me was whether this new lord was going to be a problem or a customer. He'd sent 20 people, which seemed too small for an invasion and just right for a payment delivery. Fingers crossed for option 2. Peter and his knights were escorted through the village by Bing, and their jaws did not close the entire walk. Werewolves farming. Werewolves building walls. Actual wheat fields. Skeleton soldiers on patrol. Nothing about Red Moon territory matched any description they'd ever heard. This was supposed to be an uninhabitable wasteland of death, not a functioning agricultural community with a diverse workforce. When Peter finally walked into my manor and saw me, I could read his thoughts on his face like a billboard. This guy looks like a peasant, not a lord. Straw hat, muddy clothes, dirt under my fingernails. I'd been planting corn all morning and didn't bother changing because I wasn't expecting company for another hour. But then his eyes drifted to Lucy standing beside me, and his brain briefly short-circuited. Every man who meets Lucy has that same buffering moment. Then he noticed Aurora, tiny, silver-haired, sitting in the corner looking simultaneously adorable and intimidating. I could see the question forming behind his eyes. Is that little girl the witch? Yes, buddy. That little girl could vaporize you and your entire squad before you finish drawing your sword. But she's currently eating a sandwich, so you're safe. For now. I smiled warmly, spread my muddy arms wide, and welcomed my guests to the most confusing territory in the entire empire. Part farm, part werewolf community, part skeleton army base, part crusader prison. Red Moon territory, where nothing makes sense, but everything somehow works. Welcome, I said. I hope you brought money. Peter came to Red Moon territory with 2 missions, deliver ransom money and spy on my operation. Based on his face when he walked in, the spying part was already complete. His brain was processing werewolves doing masonry, skeletons tending crops, a lord covered in dirt, a witch who looked like a 10-year-old, and a beautiful nun whose eyes screamed murder behind every polite smile. Sir, you cannot greet guests looking like a potato farmer, Bess hissed, dragging me into my room. 10 minutes later, I emerged looking like an actual nobleman. Clean clothes, proper hair, the whole performance. I know I don't look like your typical Western aristocrat. My features lean more Eastern. Black hair, brown eyes, gentle face. When I smile, I apparently look harmless, which is both an advantage and an insult. The Red Moon's permanent cloud cover had actually improved my complexion, though. No sun damage means clearer skin. Silver linings of living in a cursed hellscape. Peter introduced himself as the new captain of the Radiant Fire Crusaders. His knights brought in chests of gold coins and popped the lids open. Mountains of shiny money. Bess nearly fainted from joy. My information ability kicked in immediately. Peter had sided with David Bett during the coup and gotten promoted to captain as a reward. He was only a freshly promoted 5-star knight. And apparently, he and Vesey Frank had some kind of secret history together. The notification literally said, a past not known to others. My first thought was that Vesey had stolen his girlfriend or something equally dramatic. Rich people problems. This gave me an idea. If those two had beef, maybe I could keep Vesey instead of releasing him. A 5-star knight was incredibly valuable. I needed someone to guard my gates, and more importantly, I needed a combat teacher. Vesey was apparently talented at the knight arts, and I was still pathetically weak. My combat power was basically a 5 out of 100. Aurora was growing stronger. Bing had evolved twice. Even the skeleton soldiers could beat me up during training. I was the weakest person in my own territory, and that needed to change. Bess, count the money. Bess practically teleported to the chests. I had spent every coin we had on supplies recently, which had given the old man chest pains. Seeing gold again was like medicine for his soul. 1 5-star knight at 5,000. 10 4-star knights at 2,000 each. 43 star knights at 500 each. Total should be 75,000 gold coins. Bess looked up with his most serious accountant face. Sir, we are short 200 coins. Peter and his knights looked stunned. They thought they had brought plenty. 75,000 was already an outrageous number. Most territories would charge half that. But Bess did not care about their feelings. Bess cared about 200 missing coins. I waved my hand generously. Forget it. We are neighbors after all. Consider those 200 coins a welcoming gift for Captain Peter. Bess, please entertain our guests. I need to step away briefly. Peter, make yourself at home. I excused myself and headed for the dungeon. Aurora followed me like a shadow because she hated social situations with strangers. Fair enough. I hated them too, but for different reasons. Where are we going? She whispered. The dungeon. Are you actually releasing them? Of course. Money received, prisoners released. That is how business works. But first I want to have a little chat with our friend Vessi. I winked at her. She tilted her head like a confused kitten. Down in the dungeon, the Crusaders had been having the worst vacation of their lives. Forced labor building walls alongside werewolves, fed nothing but cheap black bread, while watching wolves eat juicy meat every single meal. Their resentment had been marinating for days. The moment they saw me, they exploded. Wolf Lord, how dare you show your face down here? Our Lord will flatten this entire territory. You allied with werewolves. You are a menace. You deserve punishment. Heretic. How does someone like you receive divine protection? You should burn on a stake like the rest of the Edwards. Let us out, you piece of garbage. Charming group. Really lovely energy. I let them scream for about 30 seconds. If you want to lose your black bread privileges tomorrow, keep talking. Silence. Instant, beautiful silence. Hungry people learn fast. They settled for glaring at me with maximum hatred, which honestly, I found more comfortable than the yelling. Vessi stayed quiet through all of it. Smart man. He knew something was wrong back home. If everything was normal, the old captain would have rescued them weeks ago. The fact that nobody came meant something big had happened. Vessi, I said casually, do you know Peter? His eyebrows twitched. He connected the dots immediately. Why is he here? He is the new captain of your Knight Order. Impossible. Vessi grabbed the iron bars and stood up. Our captain is Brace. The other knights jumped in. Peter was not even vice captain. How could he become captain? You are lying. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, half my face in lamplight and half in shadow. Maximum dramatic effect. I had been practicing this pose. He brought the ransom and introduced himself as captain. While you were all in here building walls, Radiant Fire territory changed ownership. James Bett is dead. His third son, David Bett, is the new lord. David? The illegitimate third son? He has no inheritance rights. That is absolutely impossible. The knights erupted into chaotic discussion. Denial, confusion, anger, more denial. I just stood there and waited. Eventually reality sank in. If David was not the new lord, why was Peter suddenly captain? Why did nobody rescue them for weeks? Why did the ransom take so long? The dungeon went quiet again, but this time it was the heavy silence of people whose entire world had just shifted beneath their feet. Peter is finalizing the deal upstairs right now, I said. Once it is done, you are all free to leave. But I will be honest. Whatever waits for you back home under David's leadership is probably not going to be pleasant. A lord who murders his own father and brothers is not exactly known for treating inherited soldiers kindly. I paused. Let that sink in. Watch their faces cycle through fear, realization, and dread. However, I smiled, I can offer you a different option. Peter paid the ransom, and the moment he saw Vessi, his eyes practically glowed with smug satisfaction. I could read the entire history between them just from their body language. Two kids from the same village who became knights. Vessi was always better, always ahead, and then married the Lord's cousin Lisa, leapfrogging straight to vice captain. Peter had been chewing on that jealousy for years like it was his only meal. When you see your captain, you address him as Sir. Peter's escort knight barked at the freed prisoners. If the captain had not personally brought the ransom, you would all be sold as slaves. My former dungeon residents looked at each other, swallowed their pride, and mumbled in unison, "Sir, thank you for rescuing us." Nobody looked happy about it. Peter tilted his chin up at Vesey like a rooster who just learned to crow. "Long time no see, Vesey." Vesey's eyes narrowed. "Where is the old captain?" "Died of illness." "Gave me the position." Peter said it like he was ordering lunch. Casual. Bored. Meanwhile, his eyes were drinking in every detail of Vesey's appearance. The messy hair, the scraggly beard, the damaged armor. His former rival looked like a homeless man after a bar fight, and Peter was savoring every second of it. "You are lying." The old captain was a 6-star knight. He would not just die from sickness. Vesey's forehead veins bulged, his voice cracking. The angrier he got, the more pathetic he looked, and Peter was feeding on it like dessert. Peter leaned close to Vesey's ear and whispered something. I was too far away to hear the exact words, but from context and my earlier intel, I could guess. Something about Lisa. Something about Lisa now being his wife. Something designed to detonate Vesey's last shred of composure. It worked beautifully. Vesey exploded, grabbing Peter's collar with both hands. Knights drew swords immediately, screaming at Vesey to stand down. Peter threw a punch into Vesey's stomach that doubled him over and dropped him to the floor. The sound was ugly. The smile on Peter's face was uglier. I have been training every day for this moment, Vesey. Now I am above you in rank, above you in strength. What do you have left? You animal, Vesey wheezed from the ground. Aurora tugged my sleeve. Should we stop this? I shook my head. They have been ransomed. This is their internal business, not our jurisdiction. Exactly, Bess agreed. And I swear he almost cried from happiness that we agreed on something for once. His hand drifted to his money pouch. Bess counts coins when happy. Also when sad. Also when breathing. Lucy was standing nearby peeling an apple with a knife. The apple had been reduced to a bare core 5 minutes ago, but she was still carving. She was definitely imagining it was something alive. My resident psychopath was handling her urges through aggressive fruit destruction. Progress, I suppose. Bing sat in the corner, gnawing a bone that had been licked clean hours ago. He did not care about human drama. He had his bone. Life was perfect. I looked at my team. A money-obsessed butler, a murder nun slicing invisible enemies, a skeleton eating nothing, and a tiny witch asking me about workplace ethics. I whispered to myself, am I finally about to get a normal subordinate? What did you say? Aurora asked. Nothing. Let us go see them off. Peter's group left the manor and walked into the wolf village. They should have been out of my territory in 3 hours. I stretched, yawned, and suggested we go drink tea. Bess lit up. Today we drink the good stuff. You had good tea this whole time? He smiled sheepishly. It is expensive, sir. Only for special occasions. He would never have cracked it open if not for 75,000 gold coins sitting in our vault. Bess believed he was the financial backbone of this household, and honestly, he was not wrong. Aurora asked, how long do we wait? About 1 cup of tea. Bess did not understand what we were talking about. He brewed 2 cups of Highland red tea. 1 for me, 1 for Aurora. None for himself, because that would be wasteful. I sipped mine slowly. Aurora used hers as a hand warmer. 1 cup later, I stood up. Time to go. We walked into the wolf village and found exactly what I expected. Complete chaos. But not wolf chaos. Crusader chaos. The wolves were just standing around watching like it was free entertainment. Vesey had Peter pinned to the ground and was rearranging his face with his fists. Punch after punch, absolutely relentless. Vesey's loyal knights were blocking Peter's knights from intervening. It was a full civil war in miniature, right in the middle of my village, surrounded by amused werewolves munching on jerky. I pushed through the crowd of spectating wolves, my hunting squad behind me. Peter finally shoved Vesey off, his face looking like a dropped meat pie. Humiliated and furious, he screamed at every knight present to attack Vesey immediately or face charges when they returned home. Vesey's supporters hesitated, but Peter's threat worked. They all had families back in Radiant Fire territory. Slowly, reluctantly, dozens of swords surrounded Vesey from every direction. Peter's mangled face twisted into something vicious. Kill him. Right now. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I grabbed a young wolf cub who was standing nearby watching the show with wide, excited eyes. Sorry, kid. I tossed the little guy into the circle of swords. A blade nicked his arm. The cub burst into tears. Every night froze, staring at the crying wolf child who had appeared out of nowhere. I raised my voice so every single person in that village could hear me. The Radiant Fire Crusaders have violated Red Moon Territory's second law. Injuring a local resident within our borders is a criminal offense. Arrest every single one of them. Throw them back in the dungeon. The wolves did not need to be told twice. They had been watching this drama unfold with growing irritation, and now they had legal permission to participate. Crusader Knights got tackled by werewolves from every direction. Bing drew his sword with visible excitement. Lucy stopped carving her apple core and looked genuinely cheerful for the first time all day. Peter sputtered in disbelief. He had literally just paid 75,000 gold coins to free these people, and now they were all going back to jail, including himself, because I threw a child into a sword fight and called it a law violation. Was it dirty? Absolutely. Was it legal? I literally wrote the law 10 seconds ago, so yes. Was it profitable? Extremely. That ransom money was already mine, and now I had 50+ prisoners to squeeze again. Bess looked at me with an expression caught between horror and admiration. Then his hand touched his money pouch, and admiration won decisively. Red Moon Territory's second law. Do not harm local residents. Enacted, enforced, and monetized within the same minute. That has to be some kind of legislative record. My hunting squad rounded up every single Crusader Knight like sheep at a rodeo. Peter was screaming so loud I thought his vocal cords would snap. We paid the ransom. We paid the ransom. You liars. You cheaters. You uncivilized beasts. We are the Radiant Fire Crusade. We will flatten this place. I picked my ear lazily. You are very noisy for someone who just broke the law. You people started a brawl and injured one of my residents. How is that our fault? Exactly. Aurora chimed in, arms crossed, pointing at the wolf cub beside her. This child is crying. Can you not hear him? The wolf cub was nearly 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds, clutching his slightly scratched arm and wailing like an oversized baby. The knights knew they had been set up. They could see it. They could smell it. But what were they going to do about it? Fight a witch surrounded by werewolves? They settled for cursing at us, which accomplished exactly nothing. Bess came running out of the manor when he heard the commotion. His face went through shock, confusion, and then the unmistakable sparkle of incoming profit. Sir, what happened? Why are they arrested again? They heard a local resident. It is against the law. Get me paper and ink. I am writing another ransom letter. Bess's worry evaporated like morning dew. He practically sprinted back inside to fetch writing supplies, trembling with excitement at the thought of more gold coins. That man's emotional state is entirely controlled by his proximity to money. Red Boots pulled me aside nervously. Sir, Radiant Fire Territory is right next door. We really should not keep provoking them. Other adventurers agreed. They thought I was poking a sleeping dragon with a very short stick. I waved Simba over. He walked up, and I asked to borrow his arm. Without hesitation, the old wolf extended his left arm, which swelled into a massive muscular limb the size of a tree trunk. I climbed onto it like a podium and addressed every werewolf in the village. Today I officially announce Red Moon Territory's second law. No outsider may harm a resident of Red Moon Territory for any unjust reason. Every person living here has the right to personal safety. Even if the attacker is the mighty Radiant Fire Crusade, even if they are nobility, they cannot hurt our people. Not even a scratch. The wolves erupted into the loudest cheer I have ever heard. They were genuinely moved. Their new human lord had just stood up against a powerful neighboring territory to protect a wolf child. This was real acceptance. Not just words on a contract, but action. Their loyalty and sense of belonging multiplied overnight. Now, a few sharp-eyed wolf warriors definitely saw that I was the one who threw the cub into the crowd of swords. But they kept their mouths shut. Nobody exposes the boss when the boss is on a roll. Smart wolves. Simba had been building walls and missed the whole incident. But seeing the aftermath only reinforced his belief that following me was the right call. This old wolf had been living in permanent gratitude mode lately. Every time I did anything, his eyes got watery. Emotional support werewolf. The cub stopped crying after Aurora comforted him. He had barely been scratched. Wolf healing fixed it in seconds. The kid had mostly been scared, not hurt. A 6-foot-tall toddler startled by swords. I felt slightly guilty. Slightly. Now for the real prize. Vesey did not go back to the dungeon. Instead, he knelt before me and swore loyalty to Red Moon territory. Just like that, I had a 5-star night. I immediately made him captain of the guard squad. The female ranger Dora stepped aside without complaint because she understood math. 5 stars beats 3 stars. No hard feelings. Everyone was happy about the new addition. Everyone except Peter, who was now sitting in my dungeon realizing he had been completely played from the beginning. I never intended to let anyone leave. Vesey and I had coordinated the whole thing. Take the ransom money. Provoke the fight. Create a legal excuse. Arrest everyone again. Demand more ransom. Textbook. Peter swore he would tell David everything when he got back to Radiant Fire territory. He would make sure David sent an army to crush me. He never got the chance. That night, Vesey killed him. When a man steals your wife, apparently forgiveness is not on the table. Vesey was not going back to Radiant Fire territory anyway. He had burned that bridge, set it on fire, and danced on the ashes. 1 dead rival and 0 regrets. That evening, I had dinner with my leadership team. Aurora sat to my left, eating enough for 3 people as usual. Bing gnawed his bone in the corner. Lucy cut her steak with surgical precision and unsettling eye contact. Vesey drank wine quietly, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. Simba ate his 3rd bowl of meat stew. And Bess stood behind everyone, clutching his money pouch and glaring at Bing for reasons I stopped trying to understand weeks ago. Vesey spoke up between sips. Sir, David Bed is dangerous. Perhaps you should not have antagonized Radiant Fire territory just for my sake. Too late for that. I sent him Carl's heart instead of a living Carl. We were already enemies. Even without that, he wants the gold mine in our territory. He would have come for us eventually. There is no peace to keep. This was the reality. David wanted Red Moon territory's resources. I could grovel and delay, or I could build strength and prepare. I chose strength. It was also for the wolves, I added casually. Simba teared up again. This wolf cries more than the cub I threw into a sword fight. Vesey shared intelligence over dinner. David was James Betty's illegitimate 3rd son, always treated like garbage by his family. 3 years ago, he left for the capital. There he spent years convincing a talented witch to contract with him. He returned with her and immediately overthrew his father. The witch used fire magic. A fire witch, Aurora repeated, blinking with curiosity rather than concern. I rubbed my chin. Sounds troublesome. But we have a home field advantage. Home field advantage. Everyone looked at me simultaneously. Red Moon territory has great environment. Dead silence. Sir, multiple voices said at once. Are you serious? This place has good environment. I smiled. They would understand eventually. Or they would keep thinking I was crazy. Either way, I had 75,000 gold coins, a 5-star knight, a werewolf army, a skeleton cavalry officer, a murder nun, a bottomless witch, and a dungeon full of future revenue. Red Moon territory was doing just fine. Think about it, I said, leaning back in my chair. Red Moon territory has fierce werewolf guards, endless corrupted monsters acting as a natural barrier, and now a gold mine. How is that not a perfect environment? This place is practically dripping with opportunity. The room went quiet as everyone processed this reframe. Their faces shifted from confusion to slow understanding. I had just turned every single disadvantage of Red Moon territory into a strategic asset. Apart from being completely uninhabitable for normal humans, he has a point, Bess admitted. Bing nodded while chewing his bone. That skeleton nods at everything. I could say the sky is purple, and he would nod as long as nobody threatened his bone supply. I walked everyone through the defensive strategy. If Radiant Fire territory attacks, they first have to survive the corrupted monster zone. Then break through our new city walls. Then fight through the Wolf Knight Order and the Red Moon Knight Order. Then deal with the hunting squad. Then face Aurora. Only after smashing through all those layers can they reach the manor. We just need to herd the monsters into the border zone between us and Radiant Fire territory, and they become our free security system. Bing switched to a fresh bone and nodded again. Consistent guy. Simba stroked his chin thoughtfully. To control that many corrupted monsters, you would need to hire a top-tier necromancer. Someone powerful enough to command thousands of undead creatures across a wide area. Those people are usually wanted criminals, Bessie sighed. The necromancer we hired last time took forever to find and cost a fortune. And your skeleton knight killed him. He glanced at Bing without malice. Just stating facts. I waved my hand dismissively. Who said we need a necromancer? We have a light witch. She can do the same job. Aurora pointed at herself, cheeks turning pink. Me? I can do necromancer stuff. What are corrupted monsters most afraid of? Purification light. We do not need to control them. We just chase them. Push every single monster toward the radiant fire border and let them become someone else's headache. Aurora's eyes sparkled, and she pumped her tiny fist. That is actually brilliant. Bing grabbed another bone and nodded. At this point, I think nodding is just his idle animation. But Vesey raised a valid concern. The monster coverage area is enormous. Driving them all out would drain massive amounts of magic. And the moment Aurora stops patrolling, they will flood right back into our heartland. Simba confirmed this was true. His tribe had spent years doing exactly that, endlessly clearing and re-clearing the same monsters like a never-ending chore wheel. The moment they relaxed, creatures came rushing back. Then Lucy spoke up with that gentle smile that makes grown men forget their own names. Vesey, who had killed a man over his stolen wife just hours earlier, suddenly looked peaceful, staring at her golden hair catching the lamplight. After we drive the monsters away, we place sun lamps, holy salt, and demon-repelling stones along the cleared perimeter. They will not come back through a sanctified barrier. Bing visibly shuddered at the mention of sun lamps. He and the werewolves both hated those things, which reminded me of something I had been planning. Speaking of sun lamps, I am scheduling mandatory sunlight resistance training for all undead and werewolf personnel. 1 hour per day until you build immunity. Bing's purple soul flames flickered with dread. Simba's eye twitched. Every skeleton soldier and werewolf warrior in my territory was about to spend an hour daily standing under artificial sunlight like vampires at a tanning salon. I could already hear the complaints. But tough love builds tough employees. Bess immediately found a problem because that is what Bess does. We do not have enough sun lamps. Our current supply barely covers the village we have already cleared. I looked at Lucy. Your idea is to build the church first, right? Then request free supplies from the church organization. Sun lamps, holy salt, demon stones, all provided by the institution. Lucy nodded elegantly. Exactly, my lord. My eyes lit up. Free military-grade defensive equipment courtesy of organized religion. This is why you recruit diverse talent. Every person at this table brought something different, and together we were covering gaps I could never fill alone. I put down my fork, walked to the map hanging on the wall behind me, and started drawing circles with a quill pen. Strategic planning mode activated. From now on, monsters will only exist in 4 designated zones. Here, along the radiant fire border. Here, around Horse Mountain. Here and here. I labeled them monster zones 1 through 4. Aurora handles monster herding. Bing assists her. Lucy handles church construction. Simba assists her. Vesey, I have a special assignment for you. Vesey straightened up. I am at your service, my lord. I need a complete map of radiant fire territory. Every defensive structure, every wall layout, every strategic position. Vesey blinked. You mean the classified military maps? Only the Knight Captain has access to those. I can draw from memory, but it will not be perfectly accurate. He paused, then muttered that he regretted killing Peter so quickly. Could have grabbed the maps first. Hindsight is a beautiful, useless thing. Draw what you remember. Every detail helps. Bess nearly choked on air. Sir, why do you need their military layouts? You are not seriously thinking about attacking radiant fire territory, are you? The best defense is offense. We cannot just sit here waiting to get invaded with zero preparation. Whether we strike first or use the information defensively, we need that intelligence. I also need you to identify trustworthy knights among the prisoners. Vesey, we are sending some of them back as double agents. But sir, the ransom money. Bess looked like I had just threatened to throw gold coins into a river. I gave him a look that said shut up and turned back to Vesey. Anyone you trust? Vesey thought for a moment and nodded. Good enough for me. Then let us move. Everyone, for the defense and future of Red Moon territory. The room snapped to attention. Bing shoved his bone inside his ribcage and stood at attention with the most serious expression a faceless skull can produce. Simba put down his soup bowl. Aurora Speed finished her steak and wiped her mouth. Lucy straightened her posture like a soldier. Then from outside came the sound of howling. The wolf village was right next to the manor now, and apparently it was werewolf bedtime. I rubbed my forehead. Actually, it is very late. We start tomorrow morning. Simba, go control your wolves. And for the love of everything holy, keep them away from the wheat fields." Simba saluted and jogged out. Another productive evening in Red Moon territory, where every dinner meeting ends with a strategic military briefing interrupted by wolves howling at the cursed moon outside your window. Just normal Lord things. While David Bet was busy holding a funeral for the father he personally strangled, I was getting dressed for the most important acting role of my career. The plan was simple. Deliver the ransom letter myself, disguised as a nobody messenger, and use the opportunity to spy on Radiant Fire Territory's new lord with my own eyes. I put on the cheapest clothes I owned, caked my boots in mud, and practiced looking terrified in the mirror. Aurora wore a plain linen dress with braided pigtails and smeared dirt on her face. She looked like a farm girl who had never seen a building taller than a barn. Perfect casting. We walked into Radiant Fire Territory's Lord Manor like two scared mice entering a cat convention. The nobles inside took one look at us, and their faces twisted with disgust. Exactly the reaction I wanted. When I entered the study and saw David Bet sitting on his throne, I let my legs buckle and collapsed onto the floor like a puppet with cut strings. The entire room burst out laughing. Where did this coward come from? He fainted just seeing the Lord. This is their messenger? Does Red Moon Territory have no one else? That place barely has anyone at all. I sat on the floor looking pathetic and stammered apologies. Sitting was better than kneeling. I had my pride, buried deep under 3 layers of fake humility. Aurora stood behind me with her head down, silent as a statue. Her only job was to not talk, which was honestly her strongest skill during undercover operations. David Bet told me to speak. He actually seemed slightly sympathetic toward me, probably because he spent years being the pathetic underdog himself before murdering his way to the top. Takes one to pity one. But I was not here to earn sympathy. I was here to read him. I stared directly at David Bet, emptying my mind of everything except him. I had figured out how my hidden information ability worked by now. 10 prompts maximum per target. Quality completely random. Some days useful intelligence, some days useless garbage. Today was a mixed bag. First prompt. He looks like an ordinary lord. Thanks for nothing. Second prompt. He just drank expensive Highland red tea. Wonderful. Bess would be jealous. Third prompt. He left his own father's funeral early because he does not care. Already knew that. Next. Fourth prompt. His name is David Bet, born from James Bet and an elf slave woman. Now that was useful. Half-elf blood meant enhanced physical abilities. Same as Lucy, who was also half-elf and could fight between 4- and 5-star knight level despite being a swordswoman, not a trained knight. David was probably stronger than he looked. Fifth prompt. He contracted with Fire Witch Tina and was fully supporting her second awakening. Confirmed what Vessi told me. Useful for planning. Sixth prompt. He recently killed his father and 3 brothers to become lord. Old news, but officially confirmed. Seventh prompt. He rebuilt the Radiant Fire military, hired expensive mages, and upgraded their magic cannon fortifications. Bad news. They were stronger than before. Much stronger. Eighth prompt. He enjoys torturing elf girls. His own mother was an elf slave, so he tortures women who look like his mother. I am not a therapist, but that is extremely messed up. This man needed professional help and possibly a cage. Ninth prompt. He likes pretty boys. I immediately broke eye contact. Please, universe, tell me I do not look like a pretty boy. I am a muddy farmer in cheap clothes sitting on the floor. Nothing attractive about this. Nothing at all. I refuse to make eye contact again. 10th prompt. He is afraid of the dark. Now that was a weakness I could exploit. The lord of a territory neighboring the permanently dark Red Moon territory was afraid of darkness. The irony was almost too beautiful. Filed that one away for future use. 10 prompts used up. Mixed results, but several gold nuggets. Half-elf heritage, military upgrades, fear of darkness. Enough to work with. I pulled the letter from inside my shirt with trembling hands, making a big show of proving it was sealed and undamaged. The Red Moon wax stamp was intact, very official looking, if you ignored the messenger presenting it while sitting on the ground like a dropped sack of potatoes. I cleared my throat, unfolded the letter, and began reading in my most nervous, squeaky voice. Esteemed Lord Bet, I hope the wolf heart proved useful for the young lady's treatment. May Radiant Fire Territory prosper in good health, nice and polite. Butter them up first. I have received your generous ransom and hosted your nights with great hospitality before releasing Vice Captain Vesey and all personnel. True. I fed them black bread and made them build walls. Very hospitable. Unfortunately, Captain Peter and Knight Vesey appeared to have a deeply personal conflict. Upon release, the two parties engaged in violent combat throughout Red Moon Territory's bustling commercial district. We do not have a commercial district. We have one road and some wolf houses. But they did not know that. The altercation destroyed an entire street of buildings and terrorized hundreds of local residents. One child was seriously injured. The child was a 6-foot werewolf cub with a paper cut that healed in 30 seconds. The buildings were already half destroyed before any of this happened. Hundreds of residents was technically accurate if you counted werewolves. Details are flexible when you are writing diplomatic correspondence. As Lord, I was forced to rearrest all knights for violating Red Moon Territory law. This occurred in broad daylight before numerous witnesses, leaving me no choice but to enforce justice equally. Justice. Enforced by the man who threw a child into a sword fight to manufacture a crime. The legal system works in mysterious ways. Therefore, please prepare additional ransom for their release, plus compensation for property damage. Then came the bill. 2 5-star knights at 5,000 each. 15 4-star knights at 2,000 each. 55 3-star knights at 500 each. Property damage fees. Grand total, 70,000 gold coins. Also, your previous payment was 200 coins short. Please include that as well. I finished reading the letter. The room was dead silent. Every noble in that study was staring at me like I had just read a declaration of war disguised as an invoice. David Betty's expression did not change. He sipped his tea calmly, but I could see his jaw tighten slightly. 70,000 gold coins on top of the 75,000 already paid. Nearly 150,000 total, extracted from Radiant Fire territory by one farmer lord with a skeleton knight and a very creative interpretation of property law. I sat on the floor, looking as small and harmless as possible, secretly counting David Betty's heartbeats through the vein pulsing in his neck. Fast. He was angry. Good. Angry people make mistakes. And I was very, very good at profiting from other people's mistakes. When I finished reading the letter, the study went dead silent. Every servant in the room was staring at me and Aurora with, "You're about to die," written across their faces. I stayed flat on the ground, shaking like a leaf, playing the world's most pathetic messenger. The smaller I looked, the less anyone would suspect I was the actual lord who wrote that letter. Then the room exploded. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. The finance minister went ballistic. All that gold and it's not enough? Dudley and Edward think money grows on trees. He was extra angry because, fun fact I noticed, the 200 missing coins from last time were definitely skimmed by him. He would rather die than admit that publicly. He took the ransom and still kept our people? This is an insult to all of Radiant Fire territory. 70,000 more gold coins? Is he insane? Is he broke? Both. Red Moon territory has hundreds of residents. That wasteland has nothing but wolves and monsters. That fallen noble walked in with a witch, an old butler, and one skeleton. Where did hundreds of people come from? My lord, let us invade. Erase Red Moon territory from the map. It used to be ours anyway. Flatten it. Kill these 2 messengers. Send their heads back with the letter. When I heard the "kill the messengers" part, I will admit my acting was briefly not acting. A genuine chill ran down my spine. But this trip was necessary. You cannot fight an enemy you do not understand, and I needed to see David Betty's operation with my own eyes. A map from Vesey's memory was useful, but nothing beats boots on the ground intelligence. Plus, I had Aurora with me. If things went sideways, she could blast us an exit through any wall in this building. I had already confirmed that Fire Witch Tina was not present. The room was all men. That was precisely why I had burned all 10 of my information scans on David Bed, instead of saving any for later. And what a haul. Some prompts were garbage. He looks like a normal lord. And he just drank expensive tea, revolutionary insights. But then came the gold. He was half-elf, born from James Bed, and an elf slave woman. That explained his enhanced abilities. He had rebuilt his military, hired mages, and upgraded magic cannon defenses. Radiant Fire territory was stronger than ever. Then the weird stuff. He tortured elf girls despite his own mother being an elf slave. Serious psychological damage. He also liked pretty boys, at which point I broke eye contact so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. I was covered in mud, sitting on a floor. Not attractive. Not a pretty boy. Please, universe. And the jackpot. He was afraid of the dark. The lord of the territory next to permanently dark Red Moon territory was scared of darkness. I could not have written a better weakness if I tried. Now came the survival part. I threw my hands over my head and begged. Please don't kill us. We can give you information. We were forced to go to Red Moon territory. We didn't want to be there. Aurora nodded frantically like a bobblehead. Forced. Totally forced. The ministers smelled blood. What kind of information? Anything you want. Just please let us live. Is the letter true? Did Peter and Vesey really fight in the streets and destroy buildings and injure hundreds of civilians? I looked them dead in the eyes. No, none of that is true. Their faces lit up with vindicated fury. We knew it. Tell us everything. They did fight. Over a woman named Lisa. But they did not destroy any street. No civilians were hurt. Baron Edward made it all up to squeeze more money out of you. I knew that letter was lies. The finance minister screamed, practically foaming. Then I looked at Aurora. This was her moment. People instinctively trust children. A little girl with big eyes and a dirty face telling secrets? Nobody questions that. Aurora lifted her innocent face and delivered her lines with the dumb sincerity of a kid who has no idea what she is saying. Red Moon territory only has about 3,000 people. They are all from the Adventurer Guild. They do not have real knights. But they secretly borrowed 20,000 soldiers from Four-Leaf territory through some kind of cooperation agreement. They do not have a necromancer. They only have a light, which who completed 2 awakenings. Compared to mighty Radiant Fire territory, Red Moon territory is nothing. She stared up at them with those crystal-clear stupid eyes, and the ministers ate it up like candy. Every single lie Aurora told was designed to accomplish specific goals. 3,000 people made us sound bigger than we were, but not threatening. 20,000 borrowed soldiers from Four-Leaf territory was pure fiction, but it would make David hesitate before attacking and waste resources investigating a fake alliance. A twice awakened which sounded dangerous enough to demand caution, but not impossible to overcome, which would keep them planning instead of acting. And the ministers filled in their own gaps. They immediately assumed Four-Leaf territory was cooperating with me because of the gold mine. They started whispering and connecting dots that did not exist. People always believe conspiracies they construct themselves more than truths told by others. 30 minutes later, Aurora and I walked out of the Radiant Fire Manor alive, free, and loaded with intelligence. I was slightly disappointed I did not see Firewitch Tina. But the mission accomplished its real goal, buying time. David would not attack while Tina's second awakening was incomplete. He might send scouts, but my wolf patrols and monster buffer zones would catch them. Back home, Red Moon territory entered full construction overdrive. The werewolves, knowing I had antagonized Radiant Fire to protect them, worked like machines possessed. Daytime, they hauled stones and built walls. Nighttime, when they transformed into wolves, they chained themselves to the construction site and dug trenches with their claws. Every single wolf was a model employee. They did not even want overtime pay. Just meat. We cannot let Lord Lee end down. He never discriminated against us. He gave us homes, jobs, and 3 meat meals a day. For our shared homeland, we must work harder. Their enthusiasm infected the human logistics team. The adventurers felt embarrassed watching werewolves outwork them, so they started competing. Wolves worked 8 hours. Humans worked 8.5. Wolves pulled all-nighters. Humans' wish days had 25 hours. An unstoppable hustle culture swept through Red Moon territory entirely by accident. Nobody wanted to be the lazy one when an enemy army might show up any day. High walls went up. For defense towers. Multiple watchtowers. All completed under Foreman Simba's supervision. Inside the walls was Zone 1, the Lord's Manor and Wolf Village. Outside was still uncleaned, corrupted wasteland, which was now a feature, not a bug. 2 churches were built simultaneously. I had ordered a sun church for Lucy, which would let us request free sun lamps, holy salt, and demon stones from the religious organization. But Simba was a devout moon believer, so while his construction crew was building Lucy's church, they quietly built a moon church right next to it. Both finished at the same time. Sun church on the east, moon church on the west. Humans prayed east, Wolves preyed west. Spiritual diversity. Lucy left for Four-Leaf Territory with One Eye to file the church paperwork and request supplies. I gave One Eye a bonus mission. Visit his girlfriend at the Peach Inn and bring back intelligence. Two birds, one awkward romantic trip. Aurora and Ah Bing began systematically herding monsters toward the border, with the logistics team following behind to resupply them and collect loot. My little witch was finally being used as a strategic weapon instead of a cute mascot. And me? Daily night combat training with Vessi, studying the Radiant Fire defense maps, and casually visiting the Four-Leaf Territory Lord every few days for tea. Not because we were actually allies, just to create the illusion that we were, so David's spies would report back that the fake alliance Aurora invented was real. Layers upon layers. Deception wrapped in construction wrapped in diplomacy wrapped in a farmer's muddy boots. Red Moon Territory was becoming something nobody expected, a genuine power, built by a skeleton who stabs people in the butt, a witch who eats like 5 people, a murder nun, an emotional werewolf king, a vengeful knight, a money-obsessed butler, and one lord who was simultaneously the territory's worst fighter and best liar. Vessi came to me one morning looking like a man who had solved the meaning of life. He was practically vibrating with excitement, holding a rolled-up paper like it contained the secrets of the universe. My lord, I finally figured it out. I had just finished training and was covered in sweat, dreaming about a hot bath. But when your 5-star knight says he cracked a problem, you listen. I unrolled the paper. A sewer map? The city's underground drainage system, Vessi explained breathlessly. Radiant Fire Territory is a fortress. Magic cannon towers on all 4 sides. Guards everywhere. Every entrance monitored. But nobody watches the sewers. The southern rainy season is so long that they built massive underground tunnels for drainage. Homeless people live down there. It is a completely unguarded passage into the heart of the city. Smart. But if you can think of it, David Betkin too. Vessi shook his head with absolute confidence. That is where nobility and common people are different, my lord. Even when David was the neglected, illegitimate son, he was still raised inside a manor. He has never stepped foot in a sewer. He has never met a homeless person. He does not even know that world exists. You cannot defend against something you have never imagined. I was impressed. Vessi understood class blind spots better than any textbook. Then he asked me something carefully, like he was testing a landmine with his toe. My lord, since you accepted werewolves, would you also consider taking in those homeless people? He was nervous. Even in a territory full of monsters, skeletons, and wolves, asking a nobleman to recruit sewer vagrants was apparently still a bold request. He expected hesitation, maybe disgust, possibly anger. I did not hesitate for even 1 second. If that is your plan, I fully support it. Do whatever you think is best. Red Moon Territory is your foundation. Go big. Vessi stared at me. You genuinely do not look down on homeless people. Heroes should not be judged by their origins. Kings and generals were not born royal. Anyone who can contribute has a place here. I meant every word. Back where I came from, those phrases were thousands of years old. Here, they hit Vessi like a thunderbolt. He repeated them quietly to himself, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Purpose. Direction. The kind of fire that does not burn out. Thank you, my lord. I will not let you down. A notification flickered in my mind. Vessi's loyalty had reached a new peak. He was now fully committed to following me, not because he had nowhere else to go, but because he genuinely believed in what I was building. I finally understood why Simba kept crying at random moments. This territory had a way of turning hard people soft. I told Vessi to draft a detailed plan, and we would review it together. He knew Radiant Fire Territory inside and out. The streets, the culture, the people, the politics. I was good at strategy, but local knowledge was irreplaceable. A smart leader delegates to experts instead of pretending to know everything. I was running a startup, and Vessi just became my head of special operations. A few days later, One Eye returned from the Peach Inn with fresh intelligence. He walked into my study looking troubled. Sir, Radiant Fire Territory is conscripting soldiers. Every male over 14 must enlist. 14. The imperial standard was 18, with some flexibility between 16 and 20. 14 was desperate. David Bett had just murdered his way through a coup, which meant he had killed plenty of soldiers in the process. His army was depleted, and he knew Red Moon Territory was growing stronger. So he was draining his own population to rebuild faster. He is pulling teenagers into the army, I said, rubbing my chin. Reckless. But sir, if our monster barrier plan works, it will not matter how many soldiers he sends. They will all become monster food before reaching our walls. One Eye was right about the defense. Aurora and Ah Bing were already herding corrupted creatures toward the border zones. Within weeks, the space between our territories would be an impassable nightmare of undead horrors. Any army marching through would be decimated before seeing our walls. But defense was only half the game. I had already made my move on the offense side weeks ago. I already talked to Lord Royce in Four-Leaf territory about this, I said casually. He opened his borders to immigration. Any family in Radiant Fire territory that does not want their 14-year-old son drafted into a suicide army can pack up and move to Four-Leaf territory instead. One Eye's jaw dropped. You predicted the conscription? It was obvious. New ruler, bloody takeover, depleted forces. Recruitment was inevitable. I just made sure the escape route was ready before the announcement. What I did not tell One Eye was the beautiful chain reaction I had set up. By visiting Royce for tea every few days, I created the appearance of a close alliance between Red Moon and Four-Leaf territory. David's spies reported this back, confirming what Aurora had told his ministers during our undercover visit. David now believed Royce and I were secretly cooperating over the gold mine. So David wrote to Royce, trying to lure him into a joint venture against me. He mentioned mineral resources, hinted at partnership, and tried to peel Royce away from my supposed alliance. But Royce misread the letter completely. He thought David was after the silver mine in the Undead Mountains, which was the resource Royce actually wanted. So Royce rejected the partnership offer cold, thinking he was protecting his own interests. This pushed relations between Radiant Fire and Four-Leaf to freezing point. Royce got scared enough to hire expensive mages for defense. David got suspicious enough to accelerate military preparations. And both of them thought they understood the situation perfectly. Neither of them realized they were both dancing on strings I had tied months ago. Royce eventually figured out part of it. He sat in his fancy manor one evening, petting his designer dog, drinking expensive wine, and asked his advisor a very intelligent question. Simon, that Leanne Edward fellow keeps coming here for tea. Is he deliberately making Radiant Fire think we are allies? Does he already know about the silver mine? Why do I feel like he is using me? Good instincts, Royce. Terrible timing. The trap was already sprung. His open immigration policy was draining Radiant Fire's population. His rejection letter had destroyed any chance of diplomatic resolution. And every cup of tea I drank in his parlor was another nail in the coffin of David's patience. 3 territories. 3 lords. 2 of them thought they were making independent decisions. One of them was drinking tea and smiling. I took another sip and savored it. Bess would be furious if he knew I was wasting good tea leaves on political theater. But some investments pay dividends you cannot count in gold coins. Everything I set up worked like a beautiful, terrifying clock. Royce in Four-Leaf territory was paranoid that David wanted his silver mine. David was paranoid that Royce and I were secretly allied over my gold mine. Both were spending fortunes on military preparations against each other, and both thought they were making independent strategic decisions. Meanwhile, I was drinking tea and smiling. But good things never last, and intelligence reports confirmed what I already expected. Fire Witch Tina completed her second awakening. She could now control blue flames, hotter and more destructive than her original red fire. Firewalls, flame tornadoes, the whole devastating package. David had been investing in her for years, and now he wanted his return on investment. The gold mine was calling. David also discovered through the black market that my messengers had lied. Red Moon territory did not have thousands of adventurers or tens of thousands of borrowed soldiers. It was all smoke and mirrors. My beautiful web of deception had finally been untangled. The angry young lord wanted payback, and he wanted gold. His war council was simple. Tina said flatten Red Moon territory. The ministers chanted it back like a choir. Decision made in 30 seconds. Democracy is efficient when everyone agrees on violence. The Radiant Fire army assembled at dawn. Morning fog draped across the landscape as sunlight glinted off thousands of armored soldiers. Cavalry formed perfect lines. Infantry gripped spears and shields. David sat on his warhorse looking like a recruitment poster, cape billowing, sword drawn, scanning his forces with cold authority. Beside him, Tina rode in a luxury war chariot with blue flames coiling above her like a serpent. The entire army radiated confidence and killing intent. The horn blew. They marched toward Red Moon territory. Then they hit the swamp. My beautiful, disgusting swamp. This was one of my proudest creations. I had Aurora and Ah Bing kill hundreds of corrupted monsters and bury their corpses in specific locations along the border. Over time, the bodies decomposed into a toxic sludge that merged with the cursed soil, creating a massive contamination zone. Anything that stepped into it got absorbed, swallowed whole, dissolved into the muck, and became part of the swamp forever. Sun lamps could not fix it. Holy salt barely scratched it. Demon stones were useless against it. David's advanced scouts disappeared into the sludge before anyone realized what was happening. Soldiers screamed as the ground swallowed their boots. Horses panicked and sank. The magnificent army ground to a complete halt at the doorstep of a swamp made from monster corpses. Tina had to handle it personally. David pulled his forces back to safe distance. She unleashed her new blue flames onto the swamp surface, and the moment fire met corrupted sludge, the explosion was enormous. The sound thundered across the entire territory like a bomb had detonated, which was exactly the point. The swamp was never meant to stop an army. It was an alarm system. My territory was so vast that watchtowers could not see the borders, but they could hear an explosion designed to be as loud as physically possible. Corrupted monster juice plus magical fire equals the world's loudest doorbell. The bells on our watchtower started ringing immediately. Within minutes, Red Moon territory transformed from a peaceful farming village into a war machine. Red Moon knights mounted up. Wolf knights bared their claws. Civilian werewolves grabbed weapons from their homes. Even the logistics team came running out with farming hoes and rolling pins. Their legs were shaking so badly they looked like they were vibrating, but they showed up. That counted for something. I climbed to the highest point of the castle, which I had officially named Red Moon Fortress. Looking down at my people, I saw fear on every face. These were former slaves, refugees, outcasts, and monsters. None of them were professional soldiers. The army marching toward us was the strongest military force in the southern border region, led by a psychopath lord and a mid-tier fire witch. But every single person below me had a reason to fight. The adventurers had signed slave contracts. They belonged to Red Moon territory, whether they liked it or not. Running meant becoming property of whoever caught them next. The werewolves were defending their actual home, the first real home they had ever been given. If Red Moon fell, they would become bounty targets hunted by every adventurer guild in the Empire. Vesey and his knights were traitors to Radiant Fire. Surrendering meant execution. Lucy needed this place for her recovery. Aurora was my contract witch. Ah Bing was my skeleton. Nobody had anywhere else to go. Backs against the wall. Every single one of them. I took a deep breath and shouted so everyone could hear. The Radiant Fire Army is here. I know you are afraid. Fear is natural. It is what makes us human, or wolf, or whatever you happen to be. But if we survive this attack, we will have truly earned our place in Red Moon territory. This will be the moment our era begins. The crowd went silent, hanging on every word. Wolves, I need your sharpest claws and strongest jaws to crush their knights' throats. The werewolves howled. Knights, I need your spears and swords to shatter their shields. The knights raised their weapons. Adventurers, use everything you have. Every dirty trick, every desperate move. Your only job is to survive this battle. The adventurers gripped their weapons tighter. We defend our home. We defend our gold mine. We throw these invaders out of our territory, and we hang their banners from our walls as trophies. Every person who fights today receives a warrior medal. If you fall in battle, your family gets 20 gold coins. If you survive, you get 200. Bess tugged my sleeve nervously. Sir, did you mix up the numbers? 20 for dying and 200 for living? Everyone will just hide. Hide where, Bess? If those walls fall, hiding means dying anyway. This is do or die. There is no third option. Bess went pale as the truth sank in. Nobody here could afford to lose. Every person in this territory was fighting for survival, not glory. The crowd erupted. Drive out the Radiant Fire Crusade. Defend Red Moon territory. The chant echoed off the fortress walls, bouncing across wheat fields and wolf villages and skeleton patrol routes. Carried by voices that shook with fear, but refused to break. Farmers held rolling pins like swords. Werewolves howled at a sky that was not even red yet. Skeleton soldiers stood motionless because they have no emotions, but I like to think Ah Bing was feeling something. War had arrived at Red Moon territory, and for the first time since I took ownership of this cursed wasteland, I was not running, scheming, or lying my way out of trouble. This time, we were fighting. The war between Red Moon territory and Radiant Fire territory officially began, and honestly, I felt pretty good about our chances. Let me explain why by reviewing my team's ridiculous growth over the past few weeks. Ah Bing had gone from a cowardly little skeleton to a peak-level Phantom Knight. Every single one of his skills was maxed out. Death Charge could trample entire groups with curses. His Wraith Shield absorbed magic and converted it into energy. His Fear Aura weakened every enemy within 100 meters. He could transform his entire skeleton into bone armor and weapons. He could control 50 undead creatures simultaneously. He was immune to high-level corrosion. His hip wiggle dance was maxed at level 10, meaning he could taunt literally anything by shaking his bony pelvis. And his swordsmanship had evolved into a self-created technique called Chrysanthemum Shadow Sword Style, a 360-degree attack targeting the weakest sphincter muscle of any opponent. Never missed. Ever. Did he deserve the title Sword Master? Absolutely not. Was he terrifying? Absolutely yes. This skeleton was destined to become an undead emperor someday. His next evolution required either sacrificing an entire village in a blood ritual or conquering the spirit of a dead hero. Both were nearly impossible for Ah Bing because he was still fundamentally a coward. He would rather sneak behind someone and stab there, but then fight them head-on. My future emperor fought like a timid assassin who exclusively targeted rear ends. I blamed Aurora for this. She carried him through every battle, and her light magic naturally suppressed undead creatures, which gave Ah Bing a permanent inferiority complex. A humble emperor was probably better than an arrogant one anyway. Aurora had grown significantly too. She could now maintain her adult combat form for 2 full hours instead of 30 minutes. A 4 times improvement. All her skills were maxed. Light orbs, light shields, purification blasts, deep self-healing, and life detection within a 100-meter radius. She was everything I had hoped for when I first contracted her. The problem was her next awakening required 100 awakening stones, and border market prices had been inflated to 5,000 gold coins each. Highway robbery. I needed that gold mine operational yesterday. Simba could not really get much stronger, but his real value was commanding a werewolf army that became unstoppable under the Red Moon. Lucy had somehow grown from 4-star knight equivalent to stronger than Vesey without anyone noticing how. She was a mystery wrapped in a nun outfit wrapped in barely concealed bloodlust. Vesey was technically my weakest leader now, but his brain was the most valuable weapon in my arsenal. He knew Radiant Fire's military inside out and could coordinate our defense like a professional general. David Betty's army hit my monster swamp and lost roughly 5,000 soldiers before even reaching our walls. Tina refused to waste magic clearing the path, so regular troops had to fight through corrupted horrors with swords and prayers. 20,000 soldiers became 15,000 by the time they emerged from the death zone. My beautiful swamp of monster corpses had done its job perfectly. The remaining army pushed through forests and barren plains, arriving at Red Moon Fortress right before sunset. The dying light painted everything in copper and blood. I stood on the walls looking down at the approaching force, and I will admit the sight was intimidating. Thousands of armored soldiers in perfect formation, battle-hardened cavalry, siege equipment dragged through monster territory just to reach my doorstep. And at the center, David bet on his black obsidian warhorse, looking every bit the villain he was born to play. Then he looked up and saw the decorations I had prepared. Peter's head mounted on the wall, alongside the heads of every Crusader knight who had refused to surrender when given the chance. David's expression darkened. His ministers screamed insults from below. Vesey gripped his sword and stared down at the army he once served. He was sweating through his silver armor, but standing firm. One different decision, and he could have been their commander instead of their enemy. But he chose Red Moon territory, and he was not looking back. Over 100 wolf warriors drew their curved blades simultaneously, producing a metallic chorus that echoed off the stone walls. I had personally selected those weapons to maximize werewolf fighting capabilities. My knights adjusted their buffalo leather bracers, spear tips catching the last golden rays of sunset. Everyone was scared. Everyone was ready. The first poisoned arrow slammed into our iron-reinforced gate, and everything exploded into chaos. Crossbow mechanisms screamed as they fired. War horses shrieked below. Heavy infantry shields crashed against our walls, throwing sparks into the darkening sky. A battering ram wrapped in sulfur smoke hammered our main gate with earth-shaking impacts. Vesey took a hit that cracked his shoulder armor, but he responded by hurling a flaming tar pot onto a siege ladder and watching enemy soldiers fall like burning meteors. The gate broke. Our wolves and knights poured out through the breach like water from a burst dam, colliding with the radiant fire army in a violent, screaming mass. Two waves of fighters smashing together, turning the ground into a river of blood and broken steel. My people fought like animals because half of them literally were animals. Then David gave the order I had been dreading. He looked at Tina. She stood up from her war chariot, red hair flying in the wind like actual flames. Blue fire spiraled out of both palms, growing instantly into a 3-meter wall of blazing destruction. The temperature spiked so hard I could feel it on the walls. She sent the firewall rolling toward my forces like a tsunami made of pure heat. Fire Witch Tina had entered the battlefield. Mid-tier awakened. Blue Flame Specialist. The single most dangerous person on this field who was not on my team. I watched the fire approach my soldiers and thought one very calm, very measured thought. Aurora, please wake up from your nap soon. We really need you right now. Aurora threw up a light shield just in time to block Tina's first fire attack. Even though Tina was a mid-tier awakened witch and Aurora was still a beginner, Aurora plus Lucy the combat, none equaled one viable fighting force. Barely, but viable. A light witch? Interesting. Tina smiled like she had found a new toy. Light shield met firewall, and the collision released an energy shockwave that blasted soldiers from both sides into the air like ragdolls. Several caught fire. The screaming was not pleasant. Aurora launched holy light orbs at Tina like glowing bowling balls of destruction. They detonated one after another with deafening explosions. But Tina raised a wall of blue flame that absorbed every single blast. The firewall hissed and groaned under pressure, but held firm. Lucy saw her opening. She charged straight through the blue firewall under Aurora's light shield protection, sword swinging, slicing through every obstacle Tina put in her path. One beautiful arc of her blade left a thin crack across Tina's fancy armor. A tiny wound, but Tina felt it. "Are you a witch too?" Tina asked, genuinely surprised. "No, just a nun." Lucy said it with the same tone you would use to say, "just passing through," while covered in blood and holding a sword. "You have courage," Tina meant it. But appreciation did not mean mercy. She conjured a fire whip woven from red and blue flames and shattered Lucy's light shield in one crack. Then she teleported directly in front of Lucy and bloomed a fire lotus beneath her feet. The flames roared upward to consume her entirely. "To die beneath my red lotus is an honor, none." Lucy's golden hair caught fire. She felt death's breath on her skin for the first time. Then Aurora appeared in a flash of blinding light, layering shield after shield over Lucy's body, pushing back the fire lotus with pure stubbornness. Lucy slashed through the flames, cut an opening, and escaped through the closing petals. Singed, smoking, but alive. The real battle had begun. On the main battlefield, Vesey commanded our forces with Simba as his deputy. Every person in Red Moon territory was fighting except Bess, who had the combat ability of a worried accountant. The Wolf Knights transformed under the Red Moon into their strongest forms and tore through the Crusader lines like furry wrecking balls. But we were massively outnumbered, and every minute that passed made it worse. David Bett personally entered the fight, which boosted his army's morale. His Fire Knights raised flame shields and formed burning formations against the wolves. The Crusaders were professionals. They adapted. They pushed back. Then David's adjutant said something interesting. "Sir, something is strange. We see the witch, the wolves, the traitor Vesey. But where is Baron Edward? Probably crying inside his castle." A minister laughed. "We will find him when we break through." David nodded and forgot about it. That was his biggest mistake. Because I was not in the castle. I was not even in Red Moon territory. While every eye was focused on the fireworks at Red Moon Fortress, Ah Bing and I had slipped away hours earlier. We followed the route Vesey had mapped out, moving at maximum speed through pre-dug tunnels that connected to Radiant Fire Territory's underground sewer system. The sewers were exactly as advertised. Enormous, dark, and smelling like the inside of a sick dragon. Decades of rainfall drainage had carved out a sprawling underground network beneath the entire city. And living in this network were dozens of homeless people who had been waiting for us. Vesey's recruits. Escaped slaves, desperate refugees, people who had fallen through every crack society had to offer. They knelt when they saw me, eyes full of desperate hope. Lord, is it true? We can really follow you and become real citizens. You will have land. You will have dignity. You will never be homeless again. Lord, forever. Lord, forever. Vesey had wisely neglected to mention that, following me, meant moving to Red Moon territory, the most cursed place on the continent. If they knew that detail, they would have chosen the sewer. I would tell them eventually. After the war, when there was no going back. Professional recruitment techniques. Under their guidance, we navigated the sewers past every guard post, every checkpoint, every magic tower above. David had never imagined anyone would attack through his drainage system because David had never set foot in a sewer. He did not know this world existed beneath his polished boots. Class blindness was his fatal weakness, and Vesey had called it perfectly. We emerged into the heart of Radiant Fire territory. The city was practically empty. David had marched his entire army to Red Moon territory, leaving behind a skeleton garrison. Poor choice of words, because I brought actual skeletons. Ah Bing's 50 bone soldiers split into 5 squads and fanned across the city, smashing things, causing havoc, and being generally terrifying. The homeless crew ran through the streets screaming, "The undead army is here. The undead are attacking." Nobody believed them at first. Then they saw the skeletons. Panic spread like a grease fire. Civilians ran. Guards scrambled. The entire city descended into chaos, and there was nobody in charge to organize a response because all the important people were busy attacking my castle. Ah Bing and I charged straight into the Lord's manor. With most guards deployed to Red Moon territory, the resistance was pathetic. Ah Bing's chrysanthemum shadow sword style made short work of every defender. We captured every noble and official left behind. Radiant Fire territory's seat of power was mine. Meanwhile, back at Red Moon Fortress, things were going exactly as planned, which meant they looked terrible. After hours of fighting, my Wolf Knights and Red Moon Knights had retreated to the inner fortress. Everyone was wounded. Aurora, Lucy, Vesey, Simba, all bleeding, exhausted, running on fumes. Tina looked at Aurora with genuine respect. Surviving a mid-tier witch this long is impressive. You have potential, rookie. Aurora gritted her teeth and fired one last purification blast. Tina shielded her eyes from the blinding light. When it faded, Aurora was gone. She ran. Because I taught her the most important lesson in combat. If you cannot win, run. Pride is worthless if you are dead. Staying alive is the ultimate victory. My girl learned well. David stormed into my fortress with Tina and his army, demolished every building standing, and prepared to slaughter every werewolf. But the wolves were already hiding in underground shelters I had built for exactly this scenario. All that waited inside the fortress was a welcoming party of corrupted monsters, which Tina incinerated without breaking a sweat. It is a trap. Edward is not here, his adjutant reported. He ran? Fine. I have Red Moon territory. That is all I need. David smirked. Then a rider burst onto the battlefield, horse foaming, voice cracking. My lord. Emergency. Lian Edward has taken Radiant Fire territory with an undead army. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I have ever not heard. Because I was sitting in David's personal chair, in David's personal study, drinking David's personal expensive Highland red tea, petting David's personal decorative bird, surrounded by David's personal captured nobles. He came to take my home. I took his instead. While he was busy knocking on my front door, I walked in through his toilet. Checkmate. David thought he misheard the messenger. So the poor guy had to say it again. Leon Edward has captured Radiant Fire territory with an undead army. The reaction was priceless. I was not there to see it personally, but I can imagine it perfectly based on what happened next. His ministers went through every stage of grief in about 10 seconds. Denial, anger, more denial, then pure panic. Impossible. How could he breach our defenses? What undead army? Where did it come from? Sir, we searched the entire Red Moon Castle. Edward is not here. That last report sealed it. David finally understood why he never saw me during the battle. Because while he was busy demolishing my castle like an angry landlord, I was sitting in his chair, drinking his tea, surrounded by his captured nobles, having the time of my life. David wanted my gold mine, but he was not willing to trade his entire territory for it. Red Moon territory was worthless without workers, and all his workers lived in Radiant Fire territory. The math was terrible. He ordered a full retreat. Tina had to stop chasing Aurora and Lucy. My girls survived. Aurora ran away the moment she could because I trained her well. Running away is not cowardice. Running away is long-term career planning. The Radiant Fire army marched home at maximum speed, furious and exhausted, ready to reclaim their city. But when they arrived, their own defenses attacked them. Their own magic towers. Their own walls. Their own soldiers. Open the gates. We are the Radiant Fire army, David's adjutant screamed. Our lord is Lady Elisha now, the garrison commander yelled back. Elisha, David's sister. The one he kept alive because he thought women were harmless political pawns. He killed his father, killed all his brothers, but let his sisters live because they were no threat. Guess what? Threat. While I was raiding the treasury and kidnapping nobles, I also freed Elisha from house arrest and helped her take control. She was more than happy to cooperate with the guy who just handed her an entire territory on a silver platter. All she had to do was close the gates and point the magic cannons at her brother. I should have snapped her neck when I had the chance, David growled. Too late for regrets, buddy. Should have treated your family better. Or at least killed them more thoroughly. Half measures get you locked outside your own front door. David asked Tina if she could destroy the 4 defense towers. She said no. She was running on empty. Overusing magic in her condition could cause a dangerous backlash. Even witches had limits. His army was destroyed. His soldiers were starving. Half of them were wounded. They had fought werewolves all night, marched for hours, and now faced their own fortifications manned by a garrison that had been resting comfortably the entire time. The math was brutal. His advisors begged him to retreat. Regroup. Fight another day. David was about to agree when someone on the city walls shouted something that changed everything. David bet, you elf-blooded bastard. You do not belong in Radiant Fire territory. Get out of the Empire. I may have coached someone to say that. It was specifically designed to hit his weakest emotional trigger. The word, bastard, and the mention of his elf heritage were psychological nuclear bombs. David's eyes filled with blood. His veins bulged. Every rational thought evaporated. He swung his sword and screamed at his exhausted, starving, bleeding army to attack their own home. Tina had no choice but to squeeze out whatever magic she had left, risking serious damage to herself. The siege of his own city lasted an entire day. By nightfall, David's 4,000 remaining soldiers had been ground down to 800. The garrison went from 2,000 to 200. He won. He got his city back. But at what cost? Radiant Fire territory's total military strength was now 1,000 soldiers, most of them injured. Tina needed months of recovery. The magic defense towers were destroyed. The treasury was, sir, the treasury has been emptied. David's blood pressure probably broke some kind of medical record. His throat tasted like iron. Gather the nobles for an emergency meeting. The servant looked like he was about to cry. The nobles have all been kidnapped, sir. That was my favorite part. I did not just raid the vault. I grabbed every single noble in the city. Every minister, every advisor, every useful person. And Elisha, who had served her purpose and was now my guest. I left David an empty treasury, an empty council chamber, and an empty feeling in his chest. His military was shattered. His wealth was gone. His government was kidnapped. His witch was broken. His defense towers were rubble. And the neighboring territories, especially 4-leaf territory with their newly hired mages, were circling like vultures. He would need at least a year to recover, and that was optimistic. David stood in his ruined city, staring toward Red Moon territory, and whispered, Leon Edward, if I ever catch you, I will make sure you have no grave. I sneezed. Probably someone talking about me. Back in Red Moon territory, I called a meeting with all my surviving leaders. Everyone was alive. Aurora, Bing, Lucy, Simba, Vessie Bess. Battered and bruised, but breathing. The Wolf Knight order had been cut from over 100 to 50. The Red Moon Knights were down to just one eye, Red Boots, and the female ranger. The losses were real, and the mood was heavy. "Sir, did we actually win?" someone asked quietly. "We won. Radiant Fire cannot attack us again for at least a year." Then I snapped my fingers. Bing's skeleton soldiers marched in carrying chest after chest after chest. They pried open the lids. Gold coins, silver bars, jewels, gemstones, artifacts, an entire noble family's generational wealth, stacked in wooden boxes on the floor of my meeting room. I emptied David Betty's entire treasury. Bess rubbed his eyes, then rubbed them again, then a third time. His brain could not process the quantity. This was enough money to build 20 Red Moon territories. One eye's remaining, I nearly popped out. Red Boots forgot how to speak. The adventurers stared like children seeing snow for the first time. "Sir, you actually did it. That is so much money. We are rich. We are actually rich. Lord Li Yin forever. Lord Li Yin forever." They grabbed me and threw me into the air again. The tossing the Lord tradition. I wanted to tell them to stop because I was tired and sore and had just ridden through a sewer 12 hours ago. But team morale mattered. So I let them launch me toward the ceiling a few times like a human celebration ball. When they finally set me down, I straightened my clothes, put on my most serious face, and made the most important strategic announcement of my entire career as Lord of Red Moon Territory. For the next month, we party. The room exploded into the loudest cheer Red Moon Territory had ever heard. Bess did not even complain about the expense. He was too busy hugging a chest of gold coins like it was his firstborn child. Lucy smiled and started planning the menu. Simba howled. Aurora stuffed her face with victory steak. Bing did his signature hip wiggle dance, and for once, nobody laughed at him. They danced with him. We had walked into a war outmanned, outgunned, and outmatched. We came out the other side richer than we started, with our enemy crippled for a year, and every single important person still alive. Not bad for a farmer lord, a hungry witch, a butt-stabbing skeleton, a psycho nun, an emotional werewolf, a vengeful knight, and the world's cheapest butler. Not bad at all. Before the party, we held a funeral. A real one. I set aside a proper burial ground for every warrior who fell defending Red Moon Territory. Wolves and humans buried side by side. No separation. They fought together, they rest together. That part was not funny, and I will not pretend it was. Now, the party. I hired construction crews from Four Leaf Territory and rebuilt everything David destroyed. New castle, new walls, new defense towers. The village expanded to 10 times its original size. Red Moon Territory finally had a real city. Farmland grew from 10 hectares to 100. Enough food for an entire urban population. The Wolf Village got renamed Wolf District. Vesey and the human residents moved into Central Street. Every surviving fighter received a house, farmland, and 200 gold coins. The homeless sewer people eventually discovered I had tricked them into moving to the most cursed territory in the Empire. But Radiant Fire was not exactly welcoming them back, so they accepted 50 gold coins each and started unpacking. Welcome to Red Moon Territory, where the recruitment brochure is technically fraud. I sent an invitation to Lord Royce in Four Leaf Territory. He declined, claiming illness. Translation: he was terrified of getting involved with anything connected to me. Smart man. The banquet hall looked incredible. Red velvet tablecloths, silver cutlery gleaming under candlelight, waiters in vests carrying trays of gourmet food and wine. Bess was so happy he nearly cried. This was proper nobility. The Edward family used to throw parties like this every 2 weeks during their golden era. Bess would have been fully satisfied if not for the werewolves attending in their strange outfits, looking like bodybuilders who got dressed in the dark. "Is everyone here?" I asked casually. "Yes, my lord. Everyone is present." I straightened my brand new formal suit and walked into the banquet hall. Seated along the long table were 20-something very real, very terrified nobles. All kidnapped from Radiant Fire Territory. All held prisoner for over a month. All currently being physically held in their chairs by my knights. Their faces were white as paper. Not one of them wanted to be at this party. I sat at the head of the table. Aurora stood on my left. Lucy stood on my right. 2 tiny bodyguards who could destroy everyone in this room without breaking a sweat. "Good evening, everyone. I am Li N. Edward, Lord of Red Moon Territory." The nobles who had any knowledge of imperial politics immediately recognized my family name. The Edwards. The disgraced rebel family. The clan that got barbecued. And here was the last surviving member, smiling at them from across a table full of expensive wine. Panic levels increased dramatically. What do you want from us? We are nobles. You cannot kill us. That is against the law. How much money? Name your price. Just let us go, Lord Edward. Please have mercy. I tapped my wine glass. Every knight in the room drew their swords simultaneously. The hall went silent faster than Bess counting coins. Ladies and gentlemen, I invited you here to celebrate our victory and the rebirth of Red Moon territory. Please do not say depressing things like wanting to go home. 100 years ago, Red Moon territory and Radiant Fire territory were one land. Technically, you are already home. 20 faces turned the color of ash. They understood. I was not letting them leave. One brave old nobleman stood up. What are you planning, Edward? We are recognized imperial nobles. You have no right to imprison us. I swirled my wine glass slowly. Very dramatic. I had practiced this gesture in the mirror. So in your opinion, Radiant Fire and Red Moon are separate territories. Obviously, Red Moon could never compare to Radiant Fire. You cannot keep us here. Interesting. Then let us discuss the war that happened 1 month ago. Radiant Fire territory attacked Red Moon territory without legal justification. Your army destroyed our walls, our castle, and killed our residents. As nobles of Radiant Fire, you bear responsibility. That was David Betty's decision. Nothing to do with us. But you all supported him, did you not? My eyes sharpened. When he announced conscription, he asked nobles for donations. Every single one of you contributed generously. That makes you co-conspirators. You funded the invasion that killed our people and destroyed our property. Under Red Moon Territory's third law, conspiracy to wage war carries a sentence of life imprisonment. Could I actually execute nobles? No. Imperial law protected noble lives. But I could absolutely invent local laws, exploit legal loopholes, and threaten to keep them locked up forever in a territory full of werewolves and monsters. Prison in Red Moon Territory was not like prison anywhere else. Here, the walls had claws. What do you want? The nobility's collective courage collapsed like a sandcastle in a tsunami. Simple. You must compensate Red Moon Territory for our losses. We lost 3,000 elite soldiers in this war. I said it with a completely straight face. 3,000. My total population before the war was maybe 300 if you counted the skeleton soldiers and were generous with the word elite. But these nobles had been locked in a dungeon for a month. They had no way to verify anything. They exchanged skeptical glances. 3,000 elites? In Red Moon Territory? Nobody believed it. But nobody wanted to argue with a man who had wolves for guards and a witch for a secretary. 30 minutes later, every noble had submitted their compensation offer on parchment. Gold, livestock, and most importantly, slaves. Lots and lots of slaves. Because what I needed more than money was people. Warm bodies to dig mines, build roads, farm fields, and transform Red Moon Territory from a glorified camping site into a real functioning economy. 1 month after the banquet, I stood in the city square watching 3,000 newly arrived slaves fill the plaza. 3,000 pairs of hands. 3,000 future citizens. 3,000 reasons I would never need to overpay 4-leaf territory for labor again. I looked at the crowd and smiled. These people had no idea yet that Red Moon Territory was actually a decent place to live now. Good food, fair laws, meat with every meal if you were a wolf. They expected hell. They would find something considerably weirder, but surprisingly livable. Vesey appeared beside me, face serious and ready. My lord, everything is prepared. I nodded. The next chapter of Red Moon Territory was about to begin. And this time, we had the money, the people, and the firepower to ride it properly. 3,000 slaves stood in Red Moon Square wearing iron collars and chains, staring at me like I was their executioner. Old people, young people, men, women, children. Every face told the same story, absolute terror. The red moonlight was not helping the mood. Neither were the werewolf howls echoing from the city edge. Every distant growl made someone flinch, whimper, or drop to their knees begging the sun god for salvation. We are finished. The wolves will eat us. I do not want to die here. Why me? I am not even a real slave. Let me go. That last guy had a point, actually. I had asked for 3,000 elite workers, and what I received was maybe 500 capable adults and 2,500 civilians who got grabbed off the street by panicking nobles trying to fill their quota. Some of these people were farmers, grandmothers, and teenagers who had never committed a crime in their lives. The nobles just slapped slave brands on anyone nearby and shipped them here like discount merchandise. Quality control was non-existent. But I am not picky. Every person has value. If I can find a job for Lucy the murder nun, I can find a job for literally anyone. Simba roared once, and the entire square went silent instantly. Love that wolf. Best meeting opener ever invented. I walked up to the speaking platform I had built specifically for moments like this. High enough to see everyone, loud enough to reach the back rows. Aurora and Lucy flanked me as bodyguards because, embarrassingly, I was still the weakest person in my own territory. After months of training, I had barely scratched 1-star knight level. My combat power was still essentially a 5. A determined housecat could probably take me in a fair fight. I cleared my throat and began. I am Lee N. Edward, Lord of Red Moon Territory. 2 months ago, we fought a war against Radiant Fire Territory. We won, but we paid in blood. Your former masters, the nobles of Radiant Fire, sent you here as compensation for their crimes. 3,000 pairs of eyes stared up at me, overflowing with despair. They had already done the math. War compensation plus cursed territory equals expendable labor. They expected to be worked to death in monster-infested mines or used as bait for corrupted creatures. Several people started crying. The emotional dam was breaking. I understood their fear. Aurora had been sold as a slave once too. She watched the crowd with soft, sympathetic eyes. Lucy stood expressionless because she was Lucy and emotions were not her specialty. So no, I will not release you. From the moment you entered Red Moon territory, you belong here. Permanently. The crying intensified. I let it hang in the air for exactly 3 seconds. Timing is everything in speeches. You believe Red Moon territory is hell. You think wolves will devour you. You think monsters will kill you. You think the Red Moon itself will corrupt your bodies. I shook my head slowly and sighed. Human prejudice is truly a mountain. The crying stuttered. Confusion replaced some of the tears. Good. Confused people listen harder than scared people. The werewolves of Red Moon territory do not eat humans. They are cursed people, just like you are branded people. They have families, friends, feelings. Inside these walls, they will never harm you. On cue, every wolf knight raised their weapon and shouted my name. Dramatic, intimidating, but the message was clear. These wolves were disciplined soldiers, not wild animals. The slaves looked bewildered. This was not matching their expectations. You carry slave brands. Everywhere else in this empire, those brands define your entire existence. But not here. I paused. Let the silence build. Work for me for 5 years. 5 years. After that, your slave documents will be destroyed. Your brands will be nullified. You will become free citizens of Red Moon territory with your own land, your own home, your own future. The square erupted. 3,000 people all talking at once. A tidal wave of shock and disbelief crashing through the crowd. 5 years and we are free. Is that real? We get houses? And farmland? There must be a catch. They want us to do something suicidal. Even if it is dangerous, freedom is freedom, one muscular slave shouted above the noise. Lord, if what you say is true, I will do anything. Anything to be free again. I looked at him and nodded. It is true. You think this place is lawless chaos, but you are wrong. Red Moon territory has something nowhere else does. Fairness. I let that word land, then continued stacking promises like bricks. You may marry. Your children will be born free. Not slaves. Full citizens. Gasps rippled through the crowd. In the Silver Moon Empire, slave children were automatically slaves. Forever. Breaking that chain was unthinkable. You may learn to read and write. Education is your right here. More gasps. Slaves were legally forbidden from literacy everywhere else. Knowledge was a privilege reserved for the powerful. You may choose your own work. Mining, farming, weaving, logistics. Whatever matches your skills. You will receive minimum wages during your service period, plus performance bonuses. Hard workers earn more. After 5 years, you may take examinations to become civil servants or even knights. Your status as a laborer is not permanent. You will have names. Real names. Your own identities. Your own preferences. Your own lives. Every single right I listed was something the empire explicitly denied to slaves. No education, no marriage, no wages, no names, no future. Slaves were tools that happened to breathe. I was telling 3,000 tools that they were people. Not everyone understood every word. Some were too young, too old, or too overwhelmed. But emotions are contagious, and the ones who understood were already crying again. Different tears this time. Hope tears. My only requirement is loyalty. Help me build Red Moon territory into the safest, most prosperous, most powerful domain in this world. Standing on that platform, bathed in crimson moonlight, I apparently looked like some kind of divine messenger to the crowd below. I personally thought I looked like a tired farmer in a fancy suit, but perception is reality, and right now reality was working in my favor. Lord Li Yin forever. Lord Li Yin forever. Lord Li Yin forever. Wolves howled. Knights cheered. Slaves screamed with joy. 3,000 people who had arrived expecting death were now pledging their futures to a territory they had feared 10 minutes ago. The mountain of prejudice was not gone, but today it got a few cracks. I stepped down from the platform and muttered to myself, "That speech was pretty good." Aurora nodded. "You almost made me cry." Almost? I was eating jerky. Hard to cry while chewing. Fair enough. Aurora gave me a secret thumbs up as the slaves cheered. She did not mind that I still had not collected enough awakening stones for her second evolution. She was having too much fun watching me scheme and speechify to care about power upgrades. My little witch had become a connoisseur of chaos. Lucy's cheeks were flushed, but not from emotion. She was looking at 3,000 humans the way a cat looks at a room full of mice. "These people are off limits," I whispered in her ear. "Official residence. You may only hunt monsters." "Understood, my lord." She licked her lips. Disappointed but obedient. Progress. I handed the organizational nightmare to Vesey, who had been promoted from guard captain to Red Moon Night Order captain after the war. The Guard Corps reported to him too now. Peak authority. Although peak authority over 50 people was like being king of a very small hill. Still, someone had to sort 3,000 new arrivals into useful categories. Vesey and Bess worked together processing everyone. Out of 3,000, Vesey squeezed 1,000 into the Guard Corps. 500 went to Simba for the mining expedition team. The remaining 1,500 were unsortable. Old people, women, and children. Not exactly the 3,000 elite warriors I had requested. The women went to Moonlight Street and got assigned textile work. The elderly received small plots to tend. Children went to churches and welfare homes. I was building a society, not just an army. To boost productivity, I opened Red Moon Territory's first textile factory. In this world, weaving was a cottage industry. Women spun wool at home with primitive spindles and clunky looms. Fine for making one family's clothes. Terrible for mass production. I personally designed a flying shuttle mechanism and modified the home looms into factory-scale machines. They were crude compared to what I knew was possible, but even this rough prototype tripled output. The women adapted quickly since they already knew basic techniques. My industrial revolution was ugly and primitive, but it was mine. The problem was raw materials. Wool and flax came exclusively from four-leaf territory. Red Moon territory produced exactly 0 textile inputs. So I was importing from Royce again, padding his wallet while building my economy. That chubby landlord was profiting from my existence without lifting a finger. Annoying, but unavoidable. Speaking of money, the Radiant Fire Treasury loot plus noble ransoms seemed like an infinite fortune when we first counted it. Then I started building things. Roads, houses, streets, churches, a hospital, factories, underground tunnels, equipment purchases. Money evaporated faster than morning dew in a desert. Construction costs were a black hole that swallowed gold coins and burped out invoices. I needed a core industry. Monster hunting brought decent income, but the monsters would eventually run out unless another magic tide erupted. And monster attacks kept damaging infrastructure, which meant constant rebuilding costs. It was a losing cycle. The gold mine was the answer. Always had been. Time to stop talking about it and start digging. "My lord, you really do not need to come personally," Simba said as his elite squad prepared to descend into the old dried-up well above the mine. "Leave this to us. Go ahead first. Once you confirm it is safe, I will follow." By this point I had fully accepted that I had 0 combat talent. No amount of training would make me a 5-star knight. Some people are born warriors. I was born a strategist who got kicked into walls by skeleton sparring partners. So I went the other route. Equipment. I was now a walking pay-to-win character. 5 magical items stacked on my body like cheat codes. Elf ring on my left ear. Enhanced hearing plus 100 health points. Sun ring on my left hand. 1,000 health points during daytime, 500 at night. Moonshield bracelet on my right hand. Absorbed moonlight for defense. Could block 1 witch-level attack, plus 200 health points passively. Holy necklace around my neck. 500 health points. Lord's armor on my body. 1,500 health points. Total health pool, 3,400 points. A trainee knight had about 100. A 1-star knight had 200. I had the health of 17 1-star knights duct taped together. Even Aurora could not one-shot me anymore. I was the world's most durable farmer. Offensively useless, defensively immortal. The human equivalent of a brick wall that occasionally gives motivational speeches. So even if something horrible waited at the bottom of that well, I was confident I would survive long enough to scream for help. Plus Aurora was coming with me as insurance. The wolves climbed down first. After a few minutes, Simba's voice echoed up. All clear, my lord. Safe to descend. I looked at Aurora. Let us go. She nodded, and we climbed down together into the darkness. The well connected to an underground tunnel system. Aurora launched a purification light flare to illuminate the passage. The wolves went slightly, but held steady. Months of mandatory sunlight resistance training had paid off. Nobody collapsed or ran screaming this time. Aurora held out her small hand. I put my larger hand over hers. We walked through the narrow mine tunnel together like an oddly mismatched father-daughter hiking trip through the underworld. About 100 meters in, I spotted something on the ground. A mining pickaxe, broken and discarded. My information ability activated immediately. An ordinary pickaxe, recently used by a goblin miner. The head is broken and cannot be used further. Please replace if mining is desired. Goblins. The mysterious underground species was goblins. Small green-skinned creatures who lived beneath the surface and apparently had been mining this gold deposit before we even knew it existed. So the scary unknown race guarding our gold mine was a bunch of goblins with broken pickaxes. Red Moon Territory's underground neighbor was basically a colony of green midgets who liked digging holes. My skeleton scouts had called them a mysterious species. Very dramatic language for what turned out to be goblins. I expected ancient dragons or dark elves. I got the fantasy world equivalent of moles with tools. We found more evidence as we walked deeper. Scraps of food, discarded items, all belonging to the same goblin based on my analysis. One lonely goblin miner with a broken pickaxe, eating lunch alone in a dark tunnel. Honestly, I felt a little bad for the guy, but not bad enough to share my gold mine. Sorry, little green friend. New management has arrived. And new management has a witch, a skeleton army, a werewolf labor force, and 3,400 health points of pure stubborn refusal to die. Let the negotiations begin. My lord, someone has been living down here, Simba said, sniffing the air like a detective dog. I rubbed my chin. Not someone. Goblins. Goblins. Every wolf turned to stare at me. How can you possibly know that? I have special eyes. That was my standard explanation for everything my information ability revealed. Nobody questioned it anymore. Aurora nodded like this was completely normal because she had been benefiting from my special eyes since day one. Simba's expression darkened. If goblins live here, we have a serious problem. What kind of problem? My lord, your speech about freeing slaves has spread across every southern border town. People are actually wanting to move to Red Moon Territory now. Escaped slaves, refugees, wanderers. Our open immigration policy is attracting real settlers. But if anyone discovers goblins live here, they will turn around immediately. Goblins have the worst reputation of any species alive. He was right about the publicity. My slave liberation speech had created waves I never expected. It sparked small slave revolts in Four-Leaf Territory. Slaves demanded freedom and tried fleeing to Red Moon Territory. Most got crushed by Royce's knights before they got far, but the message was spreading. People were hearing about a territory where slaves became citizens in 5 years, where werewolves and humans lived together, where a lord actually treated people like people. The impossible was becoming attractive. Our monster containment zones had drastically reduced danger levels. Infrastructure was improving daily. Red Moon territory was genuinely becoming livable. If we could maintain this momentum, settlers would keep coming and our population would grow naturally. But goblins could destroy everything. A young wolf explained the problem in detail. Goblins are greedy, dishonest thieves who raid villages and kidnap women. They breed insanely fast. Wherever goblins settle, every nearby village packs up and leaves. Nobody wants green neighbors. Another wolf added something even worse. Actually, these days goblins do not limit themselves to women anymore. Pretty young men are also targets. Aurora and I exchanged identical looks of horrified surprise. Sounds like they are genuinely desperate, I said carefully. Then a wolf scout shouted from deeper in the tunnel. My lord, we found prisoners. My imagination immediately started painting dramatic rescue scenarios. A beautiful white-haired elf maiden chained to a wall. Maybe some kidnapped nuns in torn clothing. I was already composing comforting speeches in my head, preparing my most gentle and reassuring facial expression. We squeezed through a narrow passage. The wolves stepped aside to let me see. I saw a group of female wild boars. Very pregnant female wild boars. Bellies round and swollen, ready to pop at any moment. My prepared speech died in my throat. My brain needed a full reboot. The goblins had kidnapped pigs. Not women. Not elves. Not nuns. Pigs. They had abducted a herd of wild sows and were apparently using them for breeding purposes. My eyes wanted to resign from my face.